Meeting. The Board of Psychology, let me tell you what our mission is. The Board of Psychology advances quality psychological services for Californians by ensuring ethical and legal practice and supporting the evolution of the profession. Welcome, everyone. Today is going to be a jam-packed day, primarily predominated by petition hearings. We're going to have 4 petition hearings today. So we're going to need to move relatively quickly through the beginning of the agenda. Just for your information, we are going to move, item number 6 forward after we've taken the quorum. But in the meantime, let's take the roll. Mr. Glass-Steagall?
Akwe-Badu?
Good morning. Yes, I'm here.
Bernal? Absent. Kasuga?
Here.
Erickson?
Here.
Fu? Absent. Horn?
Here.
Jones?
Good morning, present.
Phillips?
Here.
Roll's completed.
Thank you. So as I say, we've got an action-packed day today. Tomorrow we're going to be starting the day in closed session for the executive officer's review. So just for anyone that is in attendance that wants to come back for the second day, we just wanted to warn you that the first part of tomorrow is going to be devoted, probably about the first 45 minutes or an hour of tomorrow, are going to be devoted to a closed session. There will be a closed session at the end of the day today too. Because of the peculiarities of timing, approximately 11 a.m., we're going to take our lunch break in theory, depending on how we do with the petition hearings. I also wanted to mention a couple of other things, and that is that because of the movement toward Paperlight within the Department of Consumer Affairs, and particularly within the Board of Psychology, you'll notice that we're all looking at laptops. We're now using laptops and tablets instead of using paper copies. It's taken a little bit of adjustment for all of us, I think, it'd be fair to say. So it may slow us down, but as we develop more expertise, I'm sure we'll do fine. Okay, with that in mind, are they both here? No. Okay. Well, actually, while we're waiting, why don't we take public comment for items not on the agenda, number 3? Ma'am?
Good morning, Dr. Phillips. I just had a question about the agenda before we go on, if I could.
Sure.
I know that tomorrow, in my absence, you are listed here as doing the report for Policy and Advocacy Committee. I just wanted to ask, is it possible for Dr. Erickson as a committee member to do that tomorrow?
Tomorrow is going to be a relatively short report, and I'd be happy to talk to Dr. Erickson about that. Primarily, it's going to really be Mr. Glass-Steagall.
Of course. Well, I just felt like if you wanted to acknowledge my board member,
Absolutely.
not committee member, because I know
Absolutely.
he's been at all the committee meetings. And the other issue is that I know that, just for the record, we're not doing item number 25, election of officers, during this meeting, correct?
That's correct. Because you won't be able to join us tomorrow, and because Mr. Fu is unable to join us because of a trip that he had planned before he got appointed to the board, we're going to put it over till the February board meeting. It will require a motion to hold things in place until such time as we have the election. But we can address that when we get to it. I know you won't be here for it.
Right. And
Okay.
I think I just wanted to just clarify, since I would not be there, I just wanted to make sure that it was stated for the record.
Absolutely. We want to have all the members present for the election as much as possible.
Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Bernal just got
Ms.
here.
Bernal, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I apologize for being late. Train.
Okay. So why don't we move on to the board meeting minutes while we're waiting for Mr. Castrillo and Gruffalo? Are there any comments on the board meeting minutes?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the page, sorry.
I know. Because we're getting used to it.
Okay, you are correct. It's a little challenging learning how to use this. And Mr. Glass-Steagall taught me this morning about trying to make notes on it so that'll make it easier. But I am trying to find it.
I've also found for board members' benefit that if you use the mouse, it's a lot easier to negotiate the documents.
That's what Mr. Glass-Steagall said. I mean,
Can we have Dr. Horn go while you're... Dr. Horn?
Yeah, I just have a couple of, I think, questions, so I'm going back to the start of it. Okay. The first is just a little thing. It's line 128. He encourages people. I think probably you want encouraged instead of encourages.
Did you say line 28?
Because it's past tense. 128.
Oh, 128, okay, thank you.
Talking about agenda item number 9. The sentence starts, he encourages people to, and should be encouraged people to. The next thing I have on line 256, FTB isn't spelled out. Like, I don't think people know what that means if it's not spelled out, so I suggest we spell that out. Lines 332 and 333, remove a requirement for disclosing a probationary status and the suspension of client-patient confidentiality. I don't understand what that means. Disclosing and the suspension, remove a requirement for disclosing a probationary status, so that means, and the suspension of client-patient confidentiality?
Dr. Horn, you were at 130.
332 and 333.
332. Okay.
Is it like patient confidentiality? I'm not sure.
In that bill, there was a mandatory disclosure for probationary status, no matter what level of probation you were in for the medical board.
Right.
And there was also a question about client-patient confidentiality when there's a complaint on file with the medical board. So that was a concern that I believe the California Psychological Association had brought to the board's attention, that they were concerned about in, I think they had an oppose unless amended position on the bill. Mm-hmm. So that was the issue to my memory.
And the update to the bill removed those two provisions, and that was my reporting on the removal of those provisions which were previously added.
And the suspension of client-patient confidentiality.
Mm-hmm. They removed the
They
provision
removed the
which suspended.
suspension.
Correct.
Would it be better just to say, because I think suspension of client-patient confidentiality is kind of inherently confusing, the provision regarding client-patient confidentiality? It's because they
Yeah.
moved the provision, so
Yeah.
we don't have to describe it anymore.
Is it client/patient? What is client-patient?
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Yeah,
Also-
it should be psychotherapist, patient, or
Well, that's what I'm
doctor
wondering, but this is
patient.
doctor-patient
Doctor-patient,
confidentiality. Okay.
Good catch.
And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Those are my suggestions.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. On line number 490, where it states about my comments related to the letter and stakeholder meetings, I think it should be worded, Ms. Jones spoke about the letter sent out regarding the stakeholder meetings, inquiring about the need to specifically reference the public as a stakeholder for these meetings. Because my comment was not about reminding us that the board was a stakeholder, the public is a stakeholder, it was the fact that the letter didn't include that in the letter.
Right.
Did staff get that?
Are there any other comments in the minutes? Are there any, well, I guess we should make a motion first. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Approve the minutes as amended.
Okay.
I've been reminded by Ms. Marks.
With your motion so modified, and I assume that's okay with Mr. or Dr. Erickson. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, Mr. Glassbeagle, would you call the roll?
Aquabadu,
yes.
Bernal,
Aye.
Kasuka,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Horn,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Let's go to item number 5, and that would be the budget report. We were expecting to move directly to item number 6, where we're going to meet the new deputy director, or the new director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, and the head of Bureau of Relations for the Department of Consumer Affairs. But I suspect, if my experience last night was any indication, they probably can't find an exit off the freeway that'll actually get you here. So hopefully they're not out there wandering the streets of this area.
So for agenda item number 5, the budget report, the Board of Psychology has a budget of $4,979,000 in the governor's budget for fiscal year 2017 and 2018. Due to the recent changes from CalSTARS to Fiscal, which is the financial operating platform for the state of California, the department has not received any budgetary or spending reports that are normally provided at board meetings. Budget reports will be provided to the board by email after the November board meeting, which is when I assume I will receive the reports. And this is for informational purposes only. No action is required.
Any questions? Why don't we move on to item number 6, Executive's Officer's Report, and hopefully they'll be able to join us.
Good morning, board members. I have included in your meeting materials the Executive Officer's Report. Included in the report is the annual report information. This is a report that's submitted to the state legislature each year by the Department of Consumer Affairs, and they compile all of the Board and Bureau data about licensing, enforcement, and budget information. So I'll start with the board update first. Currently, the board has 4 vacancies. We have an office technician position in licensing, a staff service analyst position in licensing, a special investigator position in enforcement, and a limited term associate government program analyst position also in enforcement. We have posted for the office technician and staff service analyst positions in licensing, and we will be posting for the enforcement positions shortly. So just an update on that. So the next item, unless there's any questions about the board report? Okay. So the second part of item number 6 is the annual report data. So you can see the number of positions, the number of licensees, and this data is as of fiscal year 16-17. So we have the licensing activity, enforcement activity, and then the cost recovery information. And this is the draft form that, once it's compiled, it'll be submitted to the state legislature. So I just wanted to provide, this is what data was pulled from Breeze, from Department of Consumer Affairs. So, and this is kind of the look and feel of the report. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
I do have one, I'm sorry, I was just kind of looking. The exam results on, what is that, where on the blue thing, summary of licensing activity? So we have the exam, we have the number passed and the number failed and how many people took it, which is certainly fine. Is there a reason we don't put like pass percentage rate or anything?
This is just the template that all the boards and programs
Okay.
use, so they're just taking the raw data and putting it in this format.
Okay, thanks.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break to allow the attorneys time to situate themselves, or the parties to situate themselves at the tables for purposes of the upcoming petition hearing, which will be starting at 9:30 a.m. In the meantime, hopefully, Mr. Graffalo and Mr. Castrillo will be able to join us.
Okay, we're on the record before a quorum of the California Board of Psychology. Today is November 16th, 2017. It is 9:37 a.m. and we are in San Diego, California. My name is Abraham Levy. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I'll be presiding over the various petitions that are before the board today. Is there any, before we go on the record with regard to our first matter, is there anything we need to discuss? Before we began, I had a brief discussion with Deputy Attorney General Martin Hagan and Dr. Murray about proceeding this morning, how we're going to proceed. But is there anything we need to discuss before we go forward?
No, Your Honor, from the Attorney General's perspective.
Okay. Well, let me get your, can you state your names for the record, please, beginning with Mr. Hagan?
Good morning, Your Honor. Martin Hagan from the Attorney General's office, appearing on behalf of Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General.
Okay. Good morning. Dr. Murray?
Edward Murray.
Good morning, Dr. Murray.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Dr. Edward Murray.
That button.
From my own self.
A couple things so you're oriented here, everyone's oriented. We have a court reporter here, so it's important that we speak in a way that everything that's being said here is taken down by our court reporter. The way we'll proceed is first Dr. Murray will present his case with respect to his petition, and then Mr. Hagan, on behalf of the Attorney General, will present the Attorney General's case. I note that I have and the board members have a copy of the petition for reinstatement that Dr. Murray has submitted, and absent any objection, I'll make that part of the record and I'll identify it as Exhibit 1.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
And I note that that there is a detailed exhibit index with this, but I'll mark the exhibit and admit it collectively as Exhibit 1. And Dr. Murray, do you have additional? Well, before we began, you said there were 2 letters you had that you wanted
Correct.
to make part of the record as well. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct. I think they've just been handed out.
Okay. Up there to my left, I have one. So they've been given to, and thank you, Mr. Gardner, for making copies of this. They've been given to the board members, and I have a copy. And absent any objection, and if you wish to make this part of the record, sir?
Yes.
Okay. I'll mark these 2 letters dated October 16th, 2017, and from Dr. Sundayo, and a letter dated October 27th, 2017 from Dr. Dean. I'll mark those sequentially as Exhibits 2 and 3. And absent any objection, I'll make them part of the record. You don't have any objection, Mr. Hagan?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so Exhibits 2, 3 are admitted. So at this point, sir, I'll I'll swear you in so you can testify before the board. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the state of California that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you, and please state your full name for the record, sir.
Edward L. Murray III, Edward Leroy Murray III.
Well, the board has your petition for reinstatement. What would you like to say with respect to that?
First, I want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to come and present my case. It's been a very long road getting here. I went through in the interim a car accident and was hospitalized for a while and in a coma, and I had to kind of work my way back and get to the point where I would be able to even submit this. So for me, it's a little bit of a victory just to have arrived here today and be able to do this. So and I thank you for your time. And since the time during my recovery, I've been trying to do what I can to contribute to the community. I have been working with a nonprofit, which was Lolly Lane, Title I CDC, and I was going to ask that the gentleman CEO who I brought as a witness, character witness, just come up and make a few brief statements about my work with the nonprofit, then I'll take it from there. Mr. Collins?
Mr. Collins, why don't you step forward, sir? Mr. Collins, why don't you step forward, sir, and I'll swear you in. Just have a seat there. Well, if you could stand or sit. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the state of California that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record, sir.
Michael Collins. Michael Collins.
Michael Collins. There's the little red thing on?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well, Mr. Collins, what would you like to say about Dr. Murray?
Okay. I was asked to come here as moral support and character witness, and I'd like to say that I really don't have too much to say about his character other than he's seems to be a person of good character. So does everybody else in this courtroom here. I'm a retired sheriff, former marshal, ex-police officer, and I spent many years of judging characteristics of people, and that has been my life. And I can tell by watching and listening to people here that you all are of good character also. And so at this point, I believe that Dr. Murray's paperwork in your system here speaks for itself, and I appreciate your giving him the opportunity to speak on his behalf, and I trust, and being a bailiff of court, I'm pretty sure, and I know how courts run, so I'll just leave my comments to the minimum, let you do your job. I feel comfortable that you know, you're the expert and you know what you're doing.
Could I ask if you could take a few words about my work with the nonprofit?
Okay, as far as the nonprofit, Dr. Murray has been very instrumental with the nonprofit. We've been trying for the last few years to do things for the public, shoe drives, help kids, and it's just about anything out there. And he has actually been there just about every day as he can. Due to the state, I actually had to go pick him up because he wanted to come and be a part of the community and help out. And I'm just not trying to be personal, give my personal opinion, what I feel about it. I do have a lot of respect for this doctor, but I'm just trying to be fair all the way around. I actually couldn't ask for a better person to have helped with the community development center we had. And as far as a person, as a doctor, period, he's just an inspiring person. I'll leave it at that.
All right. That's good.
Let me just see if any of the board members have any questions, beginning with board members all the way to my left, Ms. Bernal. Do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Dr. Horn?
I'm a little unclear. Can you tell me what your nonprofit does, who you work with, what you do?
But Lolly Lane Community Development Center was the center that's developed a system to work with the public in actually almost all aspects, dealing with them psychologically, some of their personal needs, and desires they have in the different communities. Being from Detroit, Michigan, and being involved in law enforcement, I spent a lot of time serving the public, and my thing was to give back to the public, and this was one of my ways of doing that in developing the community development center. I spent most of my life working with the public, and I'll spend the rest of my life working with the public, and that's just one of the things that I'm inclined to do.
So one more question. Adults and children, all members of the community?
All aspects, from adults to children, the elderly, all works.
Thanks.
Dr. Phillips?
No questions.
Ms. Warren?
Ms. Jones, I
No worries. I guess a follow-up to Dr. Horn's question would be, so in terms of what Dr. Murray has been providing, the services he's been providing at the nonprofit, you said he's been very helpful. Can you give a little bit more information on how he's been of service to the nonprofit?
Well, due to his expertise, he's been able to develop systems, books, and conditions of how to deal with the people that we do come in contact with and their personal needs. There are actually a lot of different type of needs that come our way. And I'm just a retired sheriff, former marshal, and I protect lives, and he's the doctor that deals with minds more so than, and I look forward to persons like Dr. Murray to deal with persons' minds, because I recognize the expertise of doctors and how they deal with personnel as opposed to what I dealt with, how to judge people and protect people and work with the public.
Just for clarity, so he provides like the actual materials you said, and he also provides one-on-one services with some of the...
No.
Okay, just wanted to make
No
sure.
one-on-one. No one-on-one. Just it's got basic guidance on what can be done.
Okay. Supporting staff members in that way?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Erickson?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Ms. Badu?
Yes. Just kind of following up, do you do seminars with staff or just personnel? Oh, okay. Yes. Does he do seminars with staff, or I'm just still trying to get...
Okay, let me just, if I could elaborate, there's a problem-solving training program that I gave to some of the board members to run their little programs for helping children with problem solving. That's primarily the type of thing I was doing.
So you've given them...
It's a book. It's called When Push Comes to Shove. It's published by Cricket Cottage, and it's all about problem solving training, and they use that as a guideline to work with the kids.
Okay. So those are the kinds of systems that you've helped them to put into place?
Correct.
Taken from that piece of material that you
Published. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Kasuga?
I have a question. Does Dr. Murray have a specific or formal job title or a position in the nonprofit?
No.
Okay, so he's just like helping out
Yes.
as a member of the community. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by any board members? Mr. Hagan, do you have any questions?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. I mean, I wasn't advised of this witness, but I do have some questions of this witness. So, Mr. Collins, first of all, thank you for appearing today. Now, you mentioned that your prior experience is basically in law enforcement, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Are you a licensed psychologist?
No.
So would it be fair to say that you can't really discuss Dr. Murray's clinical skills as you sit here today?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you know if during the period of January 2014 to present, whether Dr. Murray has been practicing at all as a psychologist?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. And do you know whether he's been providing any therapeutic services during the period of January 2014 to present?
No, I don't recall that.
All right. Now, when was the first time that Dr. Murray approached you about appearing today as a witness?
Actually, I approached them.
Okay. And I'm assuming the two of you discussed this matter before you appeared today?
No, we haven't.
Okay. You haven't discussed about when you would come to the hotel? You must have had some sort of discussion before you came here, right?
No, I actually asked Dr. Murray. I had discovered, he had mentioned that he was coming to this hearing. I asked him if he needed a ride or anything, character witness or anything, that I'd be honored to be there.
Okay. And when did this discussion take place?
Oh, probably a couple of weeks ago.
And how long did the discussion between the two of you last?
It was very brief.
Okay. Now, has Dr. Murray ever discussed with you the circumstances that led up to his psychology license being revoked?
I don't know anything about that.
Okay. And has he ever expressed any sort of remorse about finding himself in this situation with his psychology license being revoked?
Indirectly.
Okay. What do you mean by indirectly?
He may have mentioned that he had lost his license, but I never really got into any conversation of the details or anything.
And so he hasn't disclosed to you the circumstances that led to his license being revoked?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And do you have any personal knowledge as to whether or not Dr. Murray has undergone any psychological counseling for substance abuse?
I don't know.
Okay. And do you know if Dr. Murray participates in any support groups such as Narcotics Anonymous?
I personally don't know.
Okay. And do you know if Dr. Murray has ever been sought treatment as far as on an outpatient basis or an inpatient basis in regards to addressing any potential substance abuse issues?
I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Collins, I need to ask you a couple clarifying questions. One, and it may be somewhere in the petition, Dr. Murray, so excuse me, but what is the name of your community development center?
What is the name?
Yeah.
The name is Lolly Lane Community Development Center. That's what it was. It's no longer existing as of now. It's recently disbanded.
So, okay. What was the name of it? I mean, how do you spell the name of it?
Lolly.
Lolly?
Lane.
Lane?
Title I Community Development Center.
Title I Community Development Center, that's its kind of formal title?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain what the purpose of the organization was?
The purpose of the organization was part of my desire to work with the public in helping general needs of people in public, whether it was economic or educational, or whatever needs they wanted. It's something that I felt was new and was basically greatly needed in this community.
And this is a 501B?
501c3, yes, it was.
Corporation, okay.
Yes.
And when did it stop operating?
Just recently, in the last couple of months.
And out of my own curiosity, why did it stop operating?
Lack of activity. I've tried to get grants, and most of the monies that were donated or supported was basically out of my personal pocket to get it off the ground and make it work. But for some reason out there, there's so many community development centers in San Diego District and 4th District that it's really hard to get grants or any support on helping you do what you like to do out there in the public.
And you were a deputy sheriff?
I was a deputy sheriff, former marshal, and also a police reserve for over 37 years.
For 37, okay. And
Yes.
when did you retire?
About maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago, in this county.
And how long was the Lolly Lane Community Development Center operating?
About 5 years, 4 years.
Thank you, sir. And do any board members have any questions based on my questions? Or any other questions? Ms. Jones?
How long was Dr. Murray a volunteer at Lolly Lane?
Must have been at least 3-4 years. 3 years seems like.
And just out of curiosity, the Title I, what does that refer to?
Well, when I first got involved with the Community Development Center, I went to a person that probably write up how to become a nonprofit, and I was told at the time by the person that I paid $4,000 to, told me that the thing was that it would be best to apply for a 501c3 as the Title I. That was a new thing that was being done back east area, and working with the public there. Apparently, it was seen to be successful back there. We were trying to implement it here in this area.
Do you have one more question? Yes. And so, in kind of what you just said, the challenges funding from the very beginning, back to Dr. Murray's work, in terms of how many staff members was he training and what was the scope of the work? Like, was it 10 staff, 1 staff members? What was he actually?
Oh, no, it was basically just myself, and as I was head of the organization, and I would in turn take some of the things that I've learned from him and try to distribute out to different people and guide people into what we needed to do in developing our company, our nonprofit.
Also did write and submit for a grant, but didn't get funded or anything.
That's true.
So basically, you were just like a support, you were just providing advice to the executive director to do the work?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Would you speak a little louder, that way you can...
Okay. Did you want me to repeat anything?
Any questions, Mr. Hagan?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
I did want to add one more comment to Mr. Collins. He also did like 4 tours in Vietnam and as a Marine, and I really have a lot of respect for him and thank him for his service. So.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. You're excused. Well, Dr. Murray, now this is your opportunity to say what you'd like to say.
Okay. Would it be appropriate for me I'd like to read these letters into the record to start out?
Which letters are we referring to?
The ones that have been handed out? Or
they've already been admitted, and
okay.
The panel members, I'm sure, will read them. I know they will read them, so.
Okay, great. As I say, I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to come today and present my case for being relicensed. There's some issues. I went through the petition book, and there's some issues that are covered in there that I having to do with the circumstances of what happened and my contentions against them. But at this point, I don't really think it merits me trying to challenge what was held against me, except to say that there's some very extenuating circumstances by which I couldn't really bring to bear my own defense and such. As regards to having gone through all the hospitalization and the disability, which kind of kept me from even being able to mount much of a defense or anything. So I want to say I went through the rehabilitation programs. I gave my certificates having completed those, they should be in there. And the AA meetings, I attended those as well. And I did have some counseling in the hospital. I was in the hospital for several months. So I had counseling around what I had been through. And there was a lot of traumatic things that I experienced in the course of all of this that I also had to get some help with. And I'm a better man, and I just want to be given an opportunity to once again work in uplifting the community and also to try to do better for my family. Now I'm on retirement disability, and not in a very good financial position. I sometimes have to rely on the charity of others to get things done. Getting here was fiscally difficult, and providing for my family. I run out of money before the end of the month, and I would like to be able to do better as far as for myself and do better as far as the many people I've been able to help in the past. I still get lots of calls from the several hundred clientele I'd had at the time, and it hurts me to not be able to help out this struggling situation that many people have. So I'd like to prevail upon you to consider reinstating my license. I can't come up with any kind of money. Like I saw there was a $10,000 reinstatement requirement, and I don't have anything like that at all. And so I'm just here to see what can be done.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to turn whatever questions board members may have to.
Yeah, the microphone.
Thank you. Apologize. I'm going to turn the questions over to the board members, beginning with Ms. Brunel, if they have any questions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Murray. I have a really quick question on, I'm looking at it on my laptop, so, excuse me, it's AGO 070.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brunel, can you give that site again? Can you give that site again?
Oh, let's see.
So I'm.
It's it is, okay, AGO 070. We're still adapting to our technology, we're folks, and I want to make sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
What? 8007?
070.
They're all stamped.
Right at the top.
Oh, on the top, it says page 2 of 6, but I'm not sure of what page. Where'd you find that?
It's near the end. It's part of Exhibit 9.
Oh, again, we're trying to,
I don't know if that helps out.
oh, you're so smart. Thank you, Dr. Kazula. It's right here. Oh. 63? 63?
Of 216.
That'll be on the PDF, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Did you find that?
This is a need, I'm sorry. Just so I'm clear, because I have the petition for a hard copy of the petition for reinstatement, and I'm sure it corresponds to the PDF files that you're looking at. But you're referring to the investigation report that's been delineated as Exhibit 9 in the packet of materials. Is that correct?
Sounds correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we just reference it? I'll figure it out.
Okay, so my question was, Dr. Murray, because you were asked on your final petition, your paperwork, at page 3 of number 3, have you recently, within 6 months, undergone a physical evaluation? And you had responded not applicable? Is that?
Psychological.
Oh, I'm sorry, a psychological evaluation. And you responded NA? Was there a reason why you had not?
Well, I was given psychological treatment during my time in the hospital, and I profited very much from that, and I didn't feel that I really needed one, but if that, I don't have the funds to do something like that, but whatever you need me to do, I'll do, as far as if you think that has to happen. But I guess that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, because there were other questions on there though as well that you applied, that you responded as non-applicable, and was that the same reason on those other questions that are on there? Such as evidence of rehabilitation, question number 7.
Well, in terms of evidence of rehabilitation, as I said, I did submit the certificates for having completed all of the classes and the attendance to the AA groups and so on. So in that sense, there's evidence of rehabilitation, and I guess that answers the question.
Thank you.
Dr. Horn, excuse me. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do, thanks. Dr. Murray, I have a couple questions for you because I'm a little bit unclear. So first of all, prior to, I'm going to say, your accident or losing your, having your license revoked, what did you do? What was your work as a psychologist?
Okay, I ran the Lafayette Wellness Center as a clinician there. At first there was 2 psychologists, myself and my business partner. He died in January of 2013, but he had gotten sick around 2012 and hospitalized, and so I ended up running the clinic by myself, and so I basically was working day and night because I had now both practices to run, because all of his clients came over to start seeing me, and I was just see clients all day from early dusk till dawn, and then go home, fall out, and get back up and get in there and do it again. So it was pretty taxing.
I bet it was. So to follow up on that, some of the letters I think that you provided us were on stationery from that organization, the Lafayette Wellness Center. So are you still affiliated with that?
No. After I got hurt, that was the last of my being involved with the Lafayette Wellness Center, because I kind of disappeared off the map when I went into the hospital, and people didn't know where I was for several months because I wasn't able to talk or anything. I had gotten a 7-level spinal fusion, and so I was semi-comatose for a little while. And then once I started slowly coming out of that coma, I wasn't fully cognizant. I wasn't able to speak and could hardly get out of bed. And so it took about maybe 5 months or so, 6 months to start being more functional. And that's also, I hadn't been able to deal with the actual court case either.
Is that why you didn't appear, say, when that came up before?
Right. It was, the attorney that I had for that case, the original attorney, was James Matthew Brown. He had defended me in an earlier case, and when this case came up, I naturally went back to him. And when I came out of my semi-coma and I started talking to him about that there was this case, I guess I talked to him a little before that, he wanted my accident case, my car accident case. And I actually wasn't functioning that well at that point, thinking things through. So my wife, she just had gotten a different attorney, and he got upset by that and started cussing me and her out and said, I want this case, I'm going to drop you criminally if you don't give me this case, So I but I just said, I really can't cope with this, and just let it go, and see, he did drop me criminally, and I just couldn't deal with the case because I was too injured. And so it just went its way where he stopped appearing for me, despite my having paid him $5,000. And then I just was not in any shape mentally, physically to deal with it. I was just, coming in and out of consciousness, only conscious for a few hours, 4 hours a day, and, you get me up to try to walk and this and that. And I just, had a priority of trying to recover. And so by the time I did start trying to deal with it, I had to deal with it. It was okay, and there's a warrant for your arrest, and also I didn't have money because I had, lost everything during that time of being in the hospital and recovering. So I had to just buy a regular attorney instead of a top-notch attorney, which made a huge difference in trying to deal with the case. So I'm not sure. I think I'm starting to ramble here. Let me kind of cut this off here.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let me understand the timeline. Between the time you were picked up or arrested by that officer, whose report we have, and the time the Board of Psychology started asking for information from you about this case, that's when you had the accident, or had you had it before you were picked up?
Okay, initially, the board came to my office shortly after I was arrested.
Okay.
And asked me to give a blood test.
Right.
And I called my attorney and said, what should I do? This was Mr. Brown. He said, don't give anything, don't do anything. So I said, okay. And then the time came for me to be arraigned. I went to court, and they said, well, no charges have been filed against you. You can go. But we have up to a year to file charges against you. And I think sometime after that, I called the board and said, well, no charges have been filed against me, and I've been let go. So it was my thinking that it was a done deal. But about a year later, almost, I got something in the mail about, okay, now you're being charged. And so then I called the attorney again, Mr. Brown, and let him know that was the case. And I wanted him to proceed in a certain way. And then sometime between then and I actually having to appear was when I ended up in the hospital. Does that make sense?
Okay. And you were in the hospital for several months.
Correct.
And have had a long, slow process of rehabilitating yourself.
Correct.
Okay, so if you were to have your license reinstated, what would you do?
Well, I'm not able to work anything near where I could before. So my thinking was initially to try to work doing some psych testing. And then if I can get fiscally sound enough, I would try to do a little practicing, but not anywhere near full-time, or I might get a job. I'm not sure.
Psych testing, like in a private practice setting for an organization? What kind of psych testing?
For an organization.
And what kind of psych testing?
Well, I used to be a IME, independent medical examiner for Bender & Bender, so I would do testing for people to get Social Security. I can work in any kind of capacity with people in various medical situations to evaluate where they're at, how well they're functioning, those kinds of things.
Okay, so now I have a couple of questions about your responses. So to follow up on what Ms. Bernal was talking about, there were certain questions that you just answered in A2, and I understand if that wasn't part of the revocation, well, it probably wouldn't be part of the revocation order. So I understand that you may not have, had these evaluations or these kinds of things within a certain period of time, and you responded in that way. But when you saw these questions, there's no answer, there's no comments, like, I received help in the hospital and I feel like that was enough. I mean, the kinds of things you said today. Okay. There was nothing like that in your responses in your application to be reinstated. And I'm wondering why.
Oh, and maybe it's a misinterpretation of what it was I was supposed to, how it was I was supposed to answer that. I guess my thinking was, were these things set out as a requirement for for me to be reinstated, and I didn't understand that that was the case. So that would be a lack of clarity about how to proceed in that situation.
Okay, so do you understand why you lost your license?
Yes.
Okay. What's your understanding of why you lost your license?
Well, from my reading here, it says that I presented a danger to self or to others, I guess, in my capacity of having been found to have substance in your blood and such.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so what, you said you went to AA?
And the rehab program, the drug rehab program.
Okay. I didn't see indication of that in these records. So
yeah, I sent...
I saw your CE stuff.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I did send the certificates of completion of those programs. I believe they should be in there somewhere.
Did you see? I'm sorry, I didn't see them, so...
If they're not in there, it wouldn't be any problem. I did send them to the board, and...
Page what?
The CEs are from page 43 onwards.
Okay, well, I know the CE, I saw the CE. I'm talking about the rehabilitation and AA attendances and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but if you did send those and they're not a part of the packet, I mean, I think we would want those. I would certainly want them just to kind of take a look at them.
I'm going to object to that because as part of the petition, I think these documents should be presented. And if they're not presented, I don't have an opportunity to cross-examine Dr. Murray on those. So I would object to the late submission or adding to the record at this point in time.
Well, nothing's been offered, and so the objection is premature, so the objection's overruled.
Okay, I think that's it for right now. Thank you, Dr. Murray.
All right.
Dr. Phillips?
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Murray.
Hi.
In the package that you submitted, you included a copy of a curriculum vitae. Do you recall that document?
Yes.
Is that your current resume, or was that your resume in the past?
From before.
Oh, it's from when you were still practicing?
Right.
Okay, that's helpful. Let me just get to the appropriate page here. So on page 38 of the packet, when you were asked on item number 6 how you would handle the situation which led to your discipline were it to happen today, you said be careful with whom you associate.
Yes, I remember that.
Do you feel like there's anything else you'd need to do in order to avoid the current disciplinary, the disciplinary proceedings, or a repeat of the disciplinary proceedings?
Certainly, avoid any kind of circumstance of being around any kind of substances or in taking anything like that, yes. That'd be, of course, a part of it. I'll say that when I went through the rehab program, I saw a lot of examples of people's lives who had been very negatively affected by getting caught up in addictions, and it was very striking. I did form some relationships during those classes with people and have an opportunity to talk to them one-on-one about things that happened to them and what they'd been through. It was pretty harrowing, and it made quite an impression upon me. So in that sense, to avoid those kinds of circumstances would be the other thing.
Okay, on the same page, it asks, what assurances can you provide to the Board of Psychology that you will not reoffend? And you wrote, not applicable.
Yeah.
So you can give us no assurance you're not going to reoffend?
That's not correct. I have every reason to not offend because, I have a family, a 9-year-old kid and a wife, and I'm trying to provide for them. And, I've seen what a blessing it is to have done the work that I've done in the past and be able to provide for them and be able to contribute favorably to the community. It weighs on my heart that I'm not able to do that now. And I wouldn't jeopardize that for anything in the world.
Okay. You said you participated in AA?
Yes, it was a requirement.
Are you still participating in AA?
Not at this time.
So you don't have a sponsor in AA?
That's correct.
What would be your sobriety date?
My sobriety date? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's just say then that it would be when I came out of the hospital, when I was in the hospital, that would be my sobriety date.
Do you know the exact date or no?
I went in the hospital on the 25th of March.
Okay, so that would be a commencement of sobriety
2013.
date.
Mm-hmm.
Do you drink alcohol?
Well, sometimes I have a beer when I watch football game, but not every time.
Okay, so you're not abstinent across the board?
Right.
Okay. You also had mentioned the $10,000 in cost recovery. You have not paid that money as of now, is that correct?
No, that's correct.
And I think you indicated you couldn't. You didn't feel like you had the financial resources to do that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Murray. So I have a couple of questions. I'm going to try to frame my question appropriately. So you mentioned about the stressors, as Dr. Horn was asking you about the work that you used to do. You talked about that it's stressful for you now in your current situation. The issue about stressors was another question that you left to put in A. And then kind of this idea, the comments that have been recently made about the AA and being involved in treatment. How would you answer that question? Do you feel like life stresses, led you to the actions or inactions? So what support systems do you have now in place? Because you just mentioned you don't go to AA any longer. And so in terms of if you were to get your license back, what is that support system that you would go to?
Okay, I do have, as you see from the support letters, friends that I can go to and that I interact with about what I'm struggling with, and I do so on a regular basis. I have programs that I'm trying to get into the school system, and I'm working to do that, and so I interact with colleagues in that regard. So, I'm able to talk about things that I'm up against, I'm stressed against. I do go to my regular physical doctor and check in with her on, how I'm going through what it is I struggle with. So I have resources. I know to take care of that part of me. I've also developed various relaxation training paradigms. I think I sent in the audio CD that I made to help alleviate stress, the Highest Love CD, and I listen to that every day and center myself before I go about the business of dealing with the challenges of that particular day.
Thank you. And then I feel like I'm kind of also left to a question in my mind. As you said, you have colleagues that you go to and you talk to about. The person you brought today to speak on your behalf was not even aware of this. And so I just am curious, like, you know, in terms of that support system and the sharing piece and really getting information, I feel like it makes me kind of ask the question, well, why would that be the case, that the person you would bring wouldn't even know the circumstances that you're even coming to discuss today? And you just mentioned that you have a support system, so it kind of feels a little unclear to me.
Well, I'm mostly at that juncture dealing with the nonprofit. We, try to do a shoe drive for the kids, and we're just kind of dealing with administrative things around that area. So, and that's not his training area, and so, it's not that I direct that kind of discussion with this particular person, but they're with other people who are more prone to be sensitive to that area, then it's a different story.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Erickson, do you have any questions?
I do have a few. Good morning, Dr. Murray. I'm wanting to be clearer as to the chronology of events. What was the date that you were arrested? Do you recall roughly?
I believe it was May in 2011 or so.
Okay. And then when did you receive word that your license was subject to revocation?
I don't recall receiving that. I saw that there was something sent to my residence. I think it was in March, the same time or date that I went into the hospital. So
That would be 2012?
13. See, I didn't actually get charged with anything until a year later.
That would be 12, and then 13 hospital, but about then you heard from the board that your license was subject to revocation?
Correct. Well, my wife did at any rate.
And I'm a little unclear here. Were you on probation for a time and then failed to show up for a hearing, or did you not ever be on probation?
I was never on probation.
Okay.
They told me after at first arraignment, the 3 months later, they said, well, you're not being charged with anything. You can go. And they gave me the impression that it was over.
I'm sorry, I meant probation with the Board of Psychology.
Oh, okay, no.
So basically, you just lost your license because you didn't appear for an administrative hearing to see whether you could be on probation or not with your license? Is that
correct?
Because earlier you had mentioned something about it was part of the terms of probation that you go to 12 steps, and I was thinking, but that would be the legal probation, not the board. Okay, good. So you didn't arrive, maybe for good reason, it seems, for that hearing, and by default, your license was revoked, and then here we are several years later with you asking for reinstatement of the license.
Yes.
Are you imagining that if that were granted, you would be on probation for a number of years with various conditions and so forth? Probation with the board, not legal, but with the board, with various conditions. Are you anticipating that, or what are your thoughts in that matter?
Well, I'm not sure how this would proceed. I would be hoping for the most freedom that I can get to practice my trade, and I would hope that the things that I've done so far have indicated that I am fit to do so. So I guess I wasn't really anticipating any particular thing. As I said, I feel it's a blessing to get here even, and I'm thankful that you have given me the opportunity to present my case. But, yeah, I didn't have a clarity about how it was going to go.
I'm and I appreciate your answering as you are. I'm getting clear that since you didn't appear at that hearing and you didn't have a finding from the ALJ that might have recommended probation with various terms and conditions, you wouldn't have known that typically people on probation are required to have psychological treatment, submit to drug testing, get a psychological evaluation, and numerous other things without going through the whole list. So that helps me understand a little why, for example, when you haven't done a psychological evaluation, am I understanding that you were never really told by the board that you had to have one?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you think you've had some problems with substance use and abuse?
In the distant past, perhaps, but I don't have those problems now.
Okay. Part of why I'm asking, and I'm trying to be thoughtful, we're not here to retry, this is not a criminal court and all the rest, but I was struck as I was reading the record last night that you basically were saying that what had happened when you were arrested was fabricated, that there was no evidence that you were using substances, that and you may have been mistreated by the officer, I don't know. But I was left with a question in my mind as to whether you believed you were mistreated and had been using drugs, or whether you were not using drugs and also mistreated at that time.
You know, I've thought a lot about how to present that because I don't have a lawyer. My case, you know, I mentioned in my addendum that what I said has happened is what happened. It is what happened. But I don't have the wherewithal to come up against probably very well-schooled gentleman here. And I don't have an issue and didn't have an issue with drugs back then. But I had to admit that I did. I had to go to classes and go through the training, and I did those things. And, you know, I don't really know how to respond to that because of the quandary of trying to say, oh, okay, here's the truth. I wasn't really using drugs, and this is what happened, and this is what I believe happened, etc. But I see myself as I'm not able to come up against an attorney or people that are well schooled at trying to come back with the opposite case. So I just acquiesce to what they say I have to do, and I'll do it because, you know, I want to be able to do well for my family and for the community. That's where I'm at.
Well, in my mind, I'm still trying to get a sense of where this stands for you. It appears that you've lost your license and are seeking reinstatement. I'm not sure that you've contemplated that you might be on probation or that you would be asking for probation if you were reinstated, and that would be for us to discuss. In the interest of time, I'm going to stop asking questions. Thank you. I feel like I've had a good start here.
May I make one more point about the situation with I'm on pain medication, and I've been on it ever since I've been in the hospital. They do blood tests for drugs or anything else all the time with that. I've been on that. And that would have already come up if that were an issue. So, that's the furthest thing from my mind, but just in terms of what those questions are, and the fact that they do take, I've been having every kind of blood test and all that all the time with my doctors as a consequence of being on this medication. So just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. I appreciate your answers.
Ms. Badou?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Mark. I just have a couple of questions, kind of segueing to what has just been said. Did you kind of acquiesce because you were told what to do, or it was shared with you that you needed to go to classes and all of that? Did you acquiesce to that because you were told to do that, or you acquiesced to that? Or did you acquiesce to that because that had truth in it, or that was true?
I was told that I had to do it.
And so that's why you did it, because you were told you had to do it.
That's correct.
Did you see any reason that you needed to do it?
Well, yes, in terms of its being some steps to take to get to where I needed to go.
And where did you think you needed to go?
I need to complete the rehabilitation classes and AA classes that were a part of trying to reassure people that I was on the right track.
Okay. I have two other questions. Well, maybe one other question. Do you have a routine that you do and a set of people that you go to when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed? First of all, do you have a routine? That's the first.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I have a relaxation CD that I listen to every single day, and it helps me to center myself and organize myself in terms of how I am managing the task. And there are various people that I'm able to talk to, that some of whom have written letters for me, and so yes.
So are these the same people that you go to all the time? Is it 2 people, 3 people, 4 people?
There's probably maybe 3 or 4 people. Not all the time, different ones that I might interact with. Some of them are not psychologists, so to speak. They may be various colleagues that I work with, acquaintances, friends rather, really.
Okay, last question. How do they help you? How does this help you?
Excuse me. Well, they provide encouragement and support, emotional support in terms of whatever conflicts or issues I may be facing. A big part of my challenge is that of my physical condition too, and I experience a lot of pain every day, and sometimes I just get a chance to vent about, well, I got to go through this and this kind of rehabilitation work, and they just encourage me to do so, and then I might talk about various goals I have, and they also again provide that encouragement and support.
Thank you, Dr. Murray.
Dr. Kasuga, do you have any questions?
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Murray.
Good morning.
I have questions regarding your practice prior to the revocation of your license. So, like on the CV that you submitted, it seems like you have a breadth of experience, but it seems too broad for me, and I can understand you're covering a lot of years here. But can you tell me what your practice is like the types of typical patients you see on your practice with your psychologist partner prior to?
A lot of post-traumatic stress, people who've been victims of crime. There's a lot of some measure of disability, level of disability treatments, evaluations that I do. As I mentioned, I was part of an IME for Bender and Bender, the Social Security firm. I'll get calls from lawyers for forensic kinds of psychological evaluations, and just everyday kinds of the stresses of dealing with different kind of community issues that come up in terms of access to services and treatment by various members of the community.
So, would you say a big portion of your practice would be therapy with individuals with PTSD, or mostly evaluations with the disability and forensic evaluations?
Okay, both. I did a lot of therapy and a lot of evaluations, so yeah, it would be both.
So, I was just looking at the CEs that you've selected, and you mentioned earlier that you're interested in practicing mostly evaluations. I was just interested to know how come you didn't pick CEs that are related to evaluation or staying current with assessments and evaluations?
Well, I don't know. I just picked what was interesting to me at the time. If there's some areas that you'd suggest that I work on, I'm quite willing to do so.
Are there educational training that you've attended that may not be part of the Cs that you noted and submitted that you've attended in order to keep abreast with psych evaluations, current testing?
Yeah, I haven't attended too many seminars. I do a lot of reading, but I don't attend much right now. It's just been very difficult to do much work at all, hoping that will continue to improve as I keep working on my physical rehab, but I certainly would take any direction in that regard.
I understand that you have some limitations currently, and I hope that you continuously feel better. With regards to your current experiences, so the CV that you submitted to us is your old CV. Can you speak a little bit about your current work-related activities, if there's any, or you're just mostly just doing rehabilitation and volunteering?
Yeah, I don't work now. I do some kind of grant research and writing for that, and as far as doing any kind of work now, clinically or whatever, that's not something I'm able to do. I've been called to make some comments about stuff that I'd done in the past by people like in the military. People are trying to get into the military and certain areas, and they say, well, you used to see this person, and what was, what I said, well, I can't, they have given their permission, but I say, well, I can't, I'm not licensed now, but, here's where, things were, but back at the time. And so that's about it, though. I don't do any kind of work. And I actually wrote a letter or email to the board, so what can I do? They said, well, you can't do anything, any kind of practice, don't do anything. I was like, okay, got it. So.
I have a question on the packet on page 176. This is with regards to your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I haven't updated that in years. So whatever's on there is pretty old.
Sorry, can you, just for the record, Dr. Kasuda, can you be referencing it to I think your PDF documents don't correlate exactly with what is now part of the record.
No worries.
So just if you can identify the document so I can kind of, so the record is clear on this. And I've been saying that all without the mic on and with the glare from our tech person.
No worries.
So all that good language has been lost
So-
to the audience.
Is the AGO number
Yeah.
more important for you?
What's the title of the document?
It's the LinkedIn profile of Dr. Murray, and it is AG.
It's attachment 6.
Okay, attachment 6. Thank you. Attachment 6, yeah.
I'll sort that out. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see where it is, but what was your question again?
So you mentioned that it hasn't been updated.
No, it's been several years since I addressed that.
Yeah, because I just wanted to point out that on your experience, it still notates that you're the owner of the Alafia Wellness Center from January 2000 to present.
Oh, yeah, that was the present 3 years ago.
Yeah, so
Not the
it
present.
So it hasn't been updated at the time that this was
Pulled up.
retrieved by October 2nd, 2017. So if people Google you or check your LinkedIn profile, this would be, they would receive your unupdated version. I guess that's just all my questions and comments. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Any other questions from any board members? Ms. Jones?
Dr. Murray, I want to go back to the comments that you made to Dr. Erickson and Ms. Badu and actually Dr. Phillips, because you said, yes, and I want to make sure I understood clearly, yes, you did have a problem with substance abuse in the distant past. Is that what you said, correct?
That's
Okay.
distant past, yes.
So outside of the timeline, so before 2011, because when you went to do all your treatment, you said to Ms. Badu that you did it only because it was a requirement of the legal probation, correct?
Correct.
And so you didn't have that problem at that time.
That's correct.
You told Dr. Phillips that your sobriety date was the day you went to the hospital. So I'm kind of confused with, my timeline's off again now. So were you were sober before 2011? Or did you get sober in 2013?
Well, I was able to document that I'm sober in 2013, but I actually was sober before 2011.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was keeping track of the timeline. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Mr. Hagan, do you have any questions?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you. Now, Dr. Murray, I agree if we look at the arrest report, you were arrested on May 11th, 2012, and a subsequent blood draw was done where you tested positive for cannabis, amphetamines, and methamphetamines. Based on you testing positive, how could you have been sober sometime prior to 2011?
Again, I'm not going to challenge that. I mean, if you ask me the question, I'll give you the answer, but I can't contest. I'm not able to contest what they say, even though in my mind and the truth is something different. I don't have the wherewithal to challenge what's being presented there. And so that's where I stand with that.
Okay, well, you admit, at least in part, that you did take illicit substances and you did engage in substance abuse, correct?
Yes, in the distant past, that's correct.
Okay. And you would agree that your blood tested positive for illicit substances as of May 11, 2012, correct?
I would agree that there's a record saying that that's so, and that I have to deal with that now.
All right. Now, when you filled out your petition for reinstatement of your license, you attempted to fill that out to the best of your abilities, correct?
I don't know if it was to the best of my abilities, given the questions that have been pointed out here. I may have gone a little faster than and not read things through or thought them through clearly, but...
Now, when you finished your petition, you then signed it under penalty of perjury in Section 7 at page AGO 024. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of your petition, one of the attachments, Attachment B, Question 3, you were asked, was it your behaviors which led to you being disciplined? And you responded, no. That's on Exhibit 6, page AGO 25. As we sit here today, are you still claiming that your behavior had nothing to do with you being disciplined?
No, I'm not claiming that. There are behaviors that contributed to it.
And what specifically are these behaviors, sir?
Taking people to, never mind. Could you repeat the question?
I'm going to ask the court reporter to repeat the question, please. Thank you.
As we sit here today, are you still claiming that your behavior had nothing to do with you being disciplined?
Okay, no, I'm not claiming that. That's not a claim of mine.
All right, now, as part of Attachment B, Question 6, you were also asked, how would you handle the situation today that led to your discipline? Let me start over. You were asked, how would you handle the situation which led to your discipline were it to happen today? And you answered, be more careful with whom you associate with. And that's Exhibit 6, page AGO 26. Does that mean that you were associating with people that you should not have been associating with?
That's probably true. There were, not that I necessarily was clear on what their involvements were, but I did have some sense that, things were going on with certain people that I was associating with that I should rather avoid.
Okay, can you be more specific? When you said things were going on, what specifically?
Like substance abuse. Like the person that I gave a ride home to, at the time a temporary secretary worker for me, I had some sense he was pretty much, I had been told, heard around that was going on in big measure, and so, but at the time I was really kind of strapped for help anyway, and was glad to have anyone helping me with all the things I had to take care of. And so I think that avoiding, that type of situation is something I would clearly do. And of course, I would not get involved in any kind of substances.
Now, were you abusing illicit substances with this group that you don't associate with anymore? So you weren't, your claim is that you weren't eliciting any or using any illicit substances with this group?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as part of Attachment C, Question 1, this is at page AGO 26, Exhibit 6, you were asked, have you taken any coursework in the areas pertaining to your offense? And you indicated yes, and see attachment. Now, the attachment appears to refer to your CE certificates, which were marked as AGO 31 through 37. Is that the coursework that you were referring to?
No, I was referring to the completion of the courses for the AA course and the rehabilitation course that I did for the court, and I had sent that in to Barbara Tanner for hopefully inclusion in this record, but I had heard just now today that that wasn't in there.
Okay, now, as far as your attendance or alleged attendance at AA meetings, were you attending that because you had an alcohol problem or a substance abuse problem or both?
It was AA and NA together, and we were required to do that as part of the rehab class. We had to go and get our form signed and be engaged, and that's what I did.
And let me go ahead and direct your attention to what's been marked as AGO 187. And we have a certificate of completion form on the top, and then we have a Mothers Against Drunk Driving course on the bottom. Let me show you what I've got. That will be a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, these were courses that were related to your ultimate conviction for reckless driving. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did the Mothers Against Drunk Driving course last?
That was just a day course.
All right. So you attended a one-day course. Have you attended any other AA program apart from this Mothers Against Drunk Driving course?
Yes.
Okay. Who is your sponsor?
I didn't have a sponsor. I had 3 meetings to go to, and we weren't required to get a sponsor. But we were required to attend the meeting and be actively engaged. I went to the 3 meetings as a part of the other certificate program that you see on there, and that lasted several months.
When was your last meeting?
It's on the completion date there.
Okay, let me go ahead and show you what's been marked as page AGO 187. I'm going to slide that over to you.
Thank you.
And can you tell me, look at that, see if that refreshes your memory as to what your completion date was of the program you're referring to?
3/31/2015.
Okay. So you attended a total of 3 meetings. How long did those meetings last?
Those are 3 AA meetings. This particular notice of completion certificate was for classes that lasted several months on something in the
Okay, I
neighborhood.
want to make sure I have your
3 to 6
testimony
months.
correct here. You say you've attended AA meetings, and you've indicated that you have attended a total of 3 meetings. Is that correct?
3 AA meetings, that's correct.
Okay. And I did not see anything in the records that included any proofs of attendance. Did you submit those as part of your application packet?
No, those were a part of being able to obtain this particular completion. You do have to submit proof of attendance, and I would never have gotten this notice of completion certificate without having, here you go.
What steps, if any, have you completed in regards to any Alcohol Anonymous meetings?
Well, again, can you just repeat that question? What steps have I completed?
Yes.
Hold on, let the witness ask to repeat the question, let the court reporter repeat the question for the witness.
What steps, if any, have you completed in regards to any Alcohol Anonymous meetings?
Okay, basically going to the meetings and understanding that how serious the situation is and what it is I have to do to stay clear of any kind of nefarious situation that could get me caught up in something that would result in the same kinds of problems. And then, of course, the steps of going through all of the several months of classes that I had on the drug classes.
Now, have you attended any outpatient treatment for any problems with substance abuse?
I've had a couple of, not for substance abuse.
Have you attended any inpatient treatment for substance abuse?
Issues concerning substance abuse were addressed during my hospitalization time, but as far as a formal program, no.
And you would agree that it's inappropriate for a licensed psychologist to use illicit drugs, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that such conduct reflects poorly on the psychology profession?
Correct.
And you would agree that the use of illicit drugs adversely affects a psychologist's care and treatment of his or her patients?
Most likely.
And it shows a disregard for the laws regarding the use of illegal substances?
Yes, sir.
And it also demonstrates poor judgment, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in regards to your positive blood test, you tested positive for amphetamines, methamphetamines, and cannabis, marijuana in the record. Where did you obtain the methamphetamine from that led to the positive test?
I don't recall obtaining any methamphetamine.
When did you start using methamphetamine?
I don't recall.
Who did you typically purchase the methamphetamine from?
I don't remember anything about purchasing any methamphetamine.
Where did you obtain the methamphetamine from?
Once again, I don't remember anything about obtaining any methamphetamines.
Now, how many times would you estimate that you used methamphetamine prior to May 11, 2012, when it was indicated as being in your system?
I couldn't say. I don't remember. I'll just say my memory since the accident, I can't remember a lot of things, so I don't recall that either.
Now, the Drug Enforcement Administration has classified methamphetamine as a highly addictive drug. Do you agree with that classification?
Well, I have no reason to doubt it.
And you also mentioned that you had attended Narcotics Anonymous. Is that correct?
I don't know if that was the designation of the class, but I had a drug class for several months. I don't know if that was the name of it, but...
Do you recall when the specific name of the drug class?
No.
Do you recall specifically when that drug class ended?
I think we just talked about that completion date being 2015, March of 2015.
Now, you've indicated in your petition, some of the attachments, that you are on retirement disability. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicate in your petition that you're on disability retirement because you're in much pain 24/7. Is that right?
Yes, I was much worse off, say even a year ago than I am now. I'm a bit better now.
Are you currently receiving disability payments?
Yes, sir.
And who are you receiving the disability payments from?
Social Security.
And are you receiving disability payments based on a total or partial disability?
Total.
And And you're receiving these payments based on the claim that you're unable to work, correct?
That's correct. But I'm trying to get to the point where I can try to work.
So currently, though, you are accepting payments from the government for total disability based on the claim that you currently are unable to work. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you indicated in the hospital that you had received some psychological treatment. Did that treatment relate specifically to issues of substance abuse?
It covered all areas. And there was some of those issues came up, but the entire of my life and issues at hand in my life were addressed.
Now,
Hold on. Before you proceed with your next question, we're going to take a short break, 5-minute break, and so Mr. Hagan can continue after the break. So we're off the record for 5 minutes. We'll return. Break. Mr. Hagan's continuing his questions.
Dr. Murray, I just have a couple brief questions remaining. So I believe you mentioned earlier that you are currently, for your physical condition, taking controlled substances, correct?
Tramadol and hydrocodone.
Okay. And do you know what the strength of the hydrocodone is?
I think it's like 525, 325, something like that.
And that's an opiate, as you understand, correct?
Yes.
And the tramadol is also an opiate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other controlled substances you're taking besides the hydrocodone and the tramadol?
No, sir.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions. I just did want to ask a point of clarification before I rested. That's all right?
Hold that thought as far as clarification is concerned, and we'll get to that. I'll ask if any board members have any questions of Dr. Murray. And I know no one does. So I'm sorry, what's your clarification, Counsel?
Well, you mentioned that you had marked as Exhibit 1 the entire petition for reinstatement package, and I just wanted to make sure that that included all the items that were listed on page 1 of the exhibit list, where there were separate marks for exhibits 1 through 10.
Well, let me just do this. Let me take back what I said and re-sequence this.
Okay.
So that we're clear and the record's clear. The exhibit index is 1 through 10, including 10 is the disciplinary guidelines, which absent objection I'll take notice of. And so 1 through 9 is sequenced according to the exhibit list, and any objection I'll resequence it from my previous classification of 1 to exhibits 1 through 9. So absent any objection, 1 through 9 are admitted. So I'll deal with it that way, so that basically those different index documents are classified and the record is hopefully more clear. I've had a chance to go through these, and these records do correspond to the index list. Some of them are a little bit out of order, but I basically have everything that's represented in the index list. So does that answer your question?
It does, and then are you going to mark the 2 letters then as exhibits 11 and 12?
Well, thank you for helping me there. I appreciate it. I'm going to do just that. 11 is October 16th, 2017, and 12 is now, or I mean, excuse me, Exhibit 2 is changed to 11, and Exhibit 3 is changed to 12. And absent any objection, that's the sequence, and those have already been admitted, but that's the new sequence for the 2 letters that Dr. Murray offered and were received into evidence. So thank you for your your efforts there to clarify the record. Anything else?
Nothing
no,
further.
let me just, let's back up for a second. So I'm sorry, does the AG have any evidence he wishes to present?
No, Your Honor, we've got everything included within the packet that has been marked as, or introduced as exhibits 1 through 10.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'll let the parties make a summary of their arguments as far as why Dr. Murray's case, he wishes the board to reinstate his license and what the AG's position is as well. So, Dr. Murray, what would you like to say, sir, as a closing statement?
Okay, I just want to again thank you everyone for their efforts in offering me this opportunity to petition for reinstatement. I want to assure you that I am fully cognizant of the need to practice psychology in a way that is worthy of respect and above board in every way, and that you're not going to have any problems with me. I'm like I said, it's a big blessing for me to even be here alive, first of all, and able to do this. And it's been a lot of hard work to rehabilitate myself. It still is quite a bit of hard work, and I don't take it for granted or any opportunity you might give me for granted. So I thank you.
Mr. Hagan, what's the AG's position?
Well, the AG's position is that we're dealing with some pretty serious offenses here, and that when Dr. Murray's license was revoked with an effective date, January 18th, 2014, it was revoked because he was arrested and tested positive for methamphetamine, marijuana, and amphetamines use, and it's clear that he really has not met his heightened burden of establishing that his license should be reinstated. And when the board evaluates this matter, I want them to think about the following points. First of all, it's Dr. Murray who has the burden of proving that his revoked license should be reinstated, and I'd submit that he has not met his burden of proof. The second thing you need to keep in mind is that this is a final decision that we're talking about. There are some references to frame-ups or other thing along those lines, but Dr. Murray has submitted no evidence that he appealed the decision, and so the allegations, the facts, and the charges in the decision are final and not subject to dispute. Now, I want to go over some of the facts just briefly over the arrest that happened on May 11, 2012. Attempted to get Dr. Murray to see if he would admit to any of his misconduct, and his answers were all over the board. At one point in time, he said he used substances. At another point in time, he said perhaps. And then at another point in time, he said no. So that's problematic. And I'll talk about more. I think the other points to keep in mind is that Dr. Murray really has not submitted any credible evidence in regards to rehabilitation, and there's also concerns about his unaddressed physical condition and the fact that he admitted that he's totally disabled and unable to work. So I think under these circumstances it wouldn't be appropriate. Dr. Murray has a burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that he should be reinstated. And that clear and convincing evidence is a pretty high standard, and he has not met that standard as far as proving the right to rehabilitation. One court has described it as the evidence must be so clear as to leave no substantial doubt, and it must be sufficiently strong to command the unhesitating assent of every reasonable mind. And I think in this case, that burden clearly has not been met. Now, the government code clearly provides that if a person does not show up for their hearing, that the board can take action on that, and that's Government Code Section 11520. If you're going to challenge this, you have to do it through a petition for writ of mandate within an appropriate period of time, and that's set forth in Government Code Sections 11521, 11523. There was no effort to do that in this case. So based on the applicable authorities, specifically Hansen v. Board of Registered Nursing, 208 Calap 4th, 664, this is a final decision that is not subject to any further attack, nor can you set aside this decision based on any alleged mistake, inadvertence, or other excuses. Now, what we do know as far as the undisputed facts is that Dr. Murray was arrested on May 11, 2012. He was backing his car out of an area that was a known drug house. He was arrested by an officer who was trained as a drug recognition expert. And on the date of arrest, he noticed that petitioner's eyes were droopy, his speech was slurred, he was breathing heavily, he had an unsteady gait, he had a leather belt that was draped over his clothing in an odd manner. His eyes were very constricted, his hands were twitching, and he was rambling in regard to his speech. And the officer also noticed that he had a white discoloration on his tongue, consistent with somebody who's been smoking methamphetamine, and that his right thumb appeared blistered, consistent with somebody using a meth pipe or some sort of pipe to take in controlled substances. All these factors were consistent with being under the influence of alcohol. Shortly after that, Dr. Murray's blood was drawn. It tested positive for amphetamines, methamphetamines, and cannabis, and it was found that he was charged with being under the influence of a controlled substance, and this shows that he's not fit to practice psychology. Among other things, it shows a lack of common sense, a lack of judgment, a failure to follow the law, and he was willing to put others at risk by driving while under a controlled substance, and these are all directly related to the practice of psychology, and it's not consistent with a member in good standing with the Board of Psychology. And probably the most disturbing point is that petitioners offered no credible evidence of rehabilitation, and he's failed to genuinely accept any responsibility or show any remorse for his actions. And if you look at the board's disciplinary guidelines, our Exhibit 10 at Section 5, it states that the board has to consider both the subjective component, the state of mind of the petitioner, and it has to look at the objective component, which is the state of facts. And specifically, as to the state of mind, the disciplinary guidelines tell the board that the state of mind demonstrating rehabilitation is one that has a mature, measured appreciation of the gravity of the misconduct and remorse of the harm caused. Petitioner must take responsibility for the misconduct and show an appreciation of why it's wrong. That clearly did not happen in the case. He did not admit to his misconduct. He didn't show any genuine insight into his misconduct. When you look at all the blank spots in the petition, it's clear that he doesn't have a true and serious appreciation for his misconduct, and there were no real sincere apologies, or he didn't own up to his misconduct. Petitioner failed to directly address his drug use. When I tried to ask him direct questions about how often he had been using it, what he was using, who he was associating with, he refused to answer any of those questions, specifically about his drug use. Petitioner has also shown no remorse or insight, as I mentioned, in regards to his professional misconduct. When you look at the 3 statements that he's written, he never owns up to his conduct. When he's asked how his actions affected others, his response is, well, it was or is a great loss to the community, which is really kind of a shallow and self-centered response. And again, when he was asked how he would handle the situation again if it were happened today, he just said, well, I'll be more careful about who I associate with, but would provide no specifics when pressed on that particular response. And when he was asked in his written petition what assurances he could provide, he couldn't provide any assurances whatsoever as far as his written statement. He's also really hasn't taken any steps to sincerely address what may be an unresolved substance abuse issue, and he hasn't offered any willingness. And I think the one board member, I think Ms. Jones, it may have been you, or I can't remember who it was, asked about, well, did you take these courses because you only acquiesced because you were told to do it? And he admitted that that was the reason he did it. He didn't say, I wanted to do it because I have a problem, I've realized this through counseling or whatever. He gave inconsistent answers about his drug use. And if you look at his letters of support, also you'll see that there's no specifics in his letters of support about him actually speaking with the people who are writing letters for him to say what he had actually done, what he learned from that, what he's doing to address that. When Mr. Collins testified, he also said he had no idea what were the underlying causes for the revocation, and there was no specific discussions about that. When people were asked about the AA records, he couldn't really produce that. So it's clear that from this record that petitioners failed to meet his heightened burden of proving that his license should be reinstated. He's not taken any responsibility for his misconduct, has not shown any appreciation regarding the gravity of the misconduct, and he's failed to offer any genuine remorse for his actions. So accordingly, the Attorney General would recommend that the petition for reinstatement be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan, and with that, unless there's anything else, I'll close the record and deem the matter submitted. And the parties will receive the board's decision in the mail. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Your
good rest of your day. Yes. The board's going to go into executive session, so any audience members are going to need to be to leave the room, and we'll post notice when the outside when the, or just open the door, I guess, when the session ends. Not like put something on the sign, you see this, whatever. So thank you, folks. Okay, we're on the record in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation filed by Amy Reyes, OAH case number, well, I have a case, I'll just give the Board of Psychology case number 600-2017, 000884. Today is November 16th, 2017. It is 12:21 in the afternoon, and we are in San Diego, California. May I have your appearances, please?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Deputy Attorney General Leanne Shields on behalf of the AG's office.
Please press the one time, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Deputy Attorney General Leanna Shields on behalf of the AG's office.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Lindsay Johnson on behalf of petitioner Amy Reyes, who is present and seated to my left.
Okay. We're before a quorum of the Board of Psychology. The petitioner has the burden in this matter. I note that I have a petition for early termination of probation with pre-marked exhibits 1 through 7, and absent any objection, I'm going to admit these documents. Any objection by either party? Ms. Shields?
No objection. No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so exhibits 1 through 7 are received into the record. And with that, is there anything we need to discuss before we hear from Dr. Reyes?
Your Honor, I believe petitioner also submitted a relapse prevention plan.
I'm sorry?
It was a relapse prevention plan. It was received after this was created. I believe it's going to be handed out.
I'm being handed a document. Have all the board members received a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is mark this next in order as 8, and absent any objection, receive it into evidence. So the way we'll proceed is we'll hear from Dr. Reyes, and then the parties will have the opportunity to, and then the Attorney General will have the opportunity to present his case and position in this matter. So with that, Ms. Johnson, how does Dr. Reyes wish to proceed?
Your Honor, Dr. Reyes would wish to call herself and be sworn in and testify for the board.
Dr. Reyes, I'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury of the state of California that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Amy Annette Reyes.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Reyes, how old are you?
37.
And what is your highest level of education?
A doctorate degree in psychology.
Are you currently employed?
I am.
And what do you do?
I work as a psychological assistant at Art Counseling and Wellness in Claremont, California.
Just gonna ask you to stop 1 second. The chicken having a hard to hear you.
Oh.
Let's try.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch where you work. What's the name of the?
I work as a psychological assistant at Art Counseling and Wellness in Claremont, California.
And would you mind briefly describing your duties there?
I do individual therapy, and I also run a group therapy for mood disorders and particularly depression and anxiety.
Is this your only place of employment?
I also work part-time at Aurora Behavioral Health, and I'm an intake counselor there. I've been there since 2010.
And would you briefly describe for us your duties there?
I do evaluations to see level of care for individuals who are either brought in by police, walk-ins, or referred by other hospitals, and to see if they need to be hospitalized, if not referred to the community.
Okay. And starting with your first position at ARC, have there been any disciplinary concerns while you've been employed?
None.
Okay. And as for your second position, have there been any disciplinary concerns?
None.
And are both facilities aware of your probationary status?
Yes.
Have they remained supportive of your employment despite this status?
Yes, very much so.
And what gives you that impression?
Well, I work very closely with my supervisor, Marissa Long, who is actually here with us today. And she's also my practice monitor. And at the hospital, and I have communicated that with Dr. Snyder, who was my supervisor at one point when I was doing my pre-doc hours.
Have they ever expressed any concern to you about your abilities to operate at the facilities?
No.
Okay. And looking at the license itself, what is the reason why you were originally placed on probation, to your understanding?
DUIs, one in 2003 and the other one in 2011.
And do you understand why the board would have had concerns about the 2 DUIs?
Yes.
And what concerns would those have been?
Inability to practice safely working with my clients, and not having the clarity that one needs to be able to practice safely.
You're currently on probation. Is that a result of an administrative order, or is that a result of a stipulated settlement?
Administrative order.
Okay. Did that order occur as a result of a settlement or attendance at an administrative hearing?
Administrative hearing.
Okay. Do you recall ever signing a settlement in this matter?
No, I do not.
Okay. And when you first went on probation, how long was that probation set to be for?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, no problem. It was worded awkwardly. That was my fault.
Okay.
You're currently on board probation?
Yes.
And how long is your probation ordered for?
Okay, I'm sorry. 5 years.
Okay. And what terms are you to comply with during those 5 years?
Attending AA and seeing a therapist, and costs that I have to pay for to the board.
Have you remained compliant?
I'm sorry. And remaining abstinence of any substances.
Okay. And have you remained compliant with those terms?
Yes.
Can you stop it for a second? She's having a hard time to understand what
Oh, I'm sorry.
answering.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I'll try to try.
Is it a volume or? Okay. Have you remained compliant with those terms?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Starting with the sobriety term, when was, or do you have a date that you consider to be your sobriety date?
March 2011.
Okay. And have you consumed any alcohol since March of 2011?
No.
And what methods do you use in order to maintain your sobriety?
I definitely have a great support system that's been very helpful. Seeing my individual therapist and attending AA, and definitely my passion for hiking has been very helpful for me.
Starting with the support system, is this a new support system or was this a support system in place in 2011?
No, it's been a support system that I've had since 2011. I have definitely made some changes with some of the people involved in my support system for healthier reasons.
Do you find yourself gravitating towards those who consume alcohol?
No, although I still have friends in my circle who do drink, but the circle that I do now have is healthy and sober.
For those that are in your circle that do still drink, when around them, do you experience any cravings?
No.
Okay. You mentioned that you attend AA?
I do.
And how frequently do you attend AA?
I was attending on a weekly basis, most recently, I believe since April. It's been bi-weekly.
And when did you first start attending AA?
As a requirement from the 2011, the 2003 DUI I did, and then sporadically, and then I began again more consistently since 2011.
And in 2011, was that court-ordered?
Yes.
Okay. Eventually, though, you finished complying with your court requirements, correct?
Yes.
So at that point, your attendance at AA became voluntary?
Yes, but not just attending meetings, but also reading what was provided to me at the beginning when I started going to AA. It's called the Grapevine magazine, and that was very helpful as well. So in between meetings or just having it with me, that was also available.
The board currently requires you to attend AA, correct?
Yes.
Would you be attending AA regardless of those requirements?
Oh, absolutely.
If your probation is terminated early, do you plan on continuing to attend AA?
Yes.
And for what reason?
It's been so helpful in so many ways. I feel like it's definitely a community that I can relate to. Primarily, even though I don't have what is called a commitment in the meetings that I attend, because of my schedule, I attend different days, so it's not always the same topic. I do like to stay and be of service to other people. One thing that I think I was a little skeptical about when I first started going to AA was the fear of judgment, and this is definitely something that I feel free from when I go to meetings, and I have learned to be honest with myself, but with other people who are part of the rooms. And that has definitely been helpful for me, just for my own humility and gratefulness to sobriety.
Have there been any other lessons that AA has taught you?
Yes.
And what are those?
Like I mentioned, honesty, integrity, and being of service has definitely been something that's resonated with me. But also part of the steps have taught me about meditation and willingness and motivation, and what I actually need to do to stay sober, which is, take it one day at a time and stay in the rooms.
Stay in the what?
In AA.
You also mentioned therapy. Are you seeing a therapist?
I am.
And is this board ordered?
Yes.
Prior to being ordered by the board, though, were you seeing a therapist voluntarily?
I was.
And what lessons, if any, have you learned from therapy?
Again, it's helped me with changing perspectives and becoming more aware and insightful about my own shortcomings and flaws and how I can get myself in trouble, but it has been helpful in my growth just on a day-by-day basis, gaining from my daily experiences, but also addressing the fact that alcohol has been a problem in my life.
Do you believe alcohol is still a problem in your life?
No, not at all.
If released early from probation by the board, would you continue to attend therapy?
Yes.
For what reason?
Again, just for my own personal growth. It has been very helpful in many ways, individually, professionally, and I do actually feel that I gain a lot from being in therapy.
For the third reason that you gave us on how you're maintaining your sobriety, in addition to AA and therapy, you mentioned a passion for new healthy lifestyle. Do you mind describing that in a little more detail?
Yes, I absolutely love being out in nature and being on the mountain, hiking. I mean, if I can hike every mountain in Southern California, that would be amazing. But it provides clarity and spirituality for me, and it's a moment for me to just check out and unplug, be in my own thoughts, and come back and feel recharged too.
In addition to AA and therapy, it sounds like if released from probation early, you plan on continuing many of the same terms imposed by the board. If that's the reason, why are you asking for the board to release you early from probation?
I don't feel it's necessary to, how can I explain this? To be supervised or monitored by the board at this time. I don't feel that I'm at risk for relapse. I feel very strongly about the work that I have done on myself and for myself, but also for myself as a professional to be able to, provide the services that my clients need, and just I have a much healthier lifestyle and a better outlook as to decision making and where I want to be at the end of the day professionally.
Are you aware that probation is typically designed for public protection?
Yes.
In addition to you feeling that it's not necessary for yourself personally, do you believe it's necessary for you to stay on probation for public protection?
No.
And why not?
Because like I said earlier, I just feel that I'm in this point in my life where I have been incredibly humbled as far as my decisions and being well aware of how that could be harmful to clients or really anybody that is around me in my environment. So that's definitely something that I don't have any concerns about at this point, because I am well aware that I do want the best for everybody around me.
Do you believe that substance abuse is a lifelong addiction?
Yes.
Do you believe that you will have to manage your substance abuse for the rest of your life?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you believe that at this point you've identified the underlying triggers that originally caused you to drink?
Yes.
And what would you identify as those underlying triggers?
One, I would say the environment or places that I would place myself in, but also maybe the lack of understanding or acknowledging the potential harm that it can and that it may cause.
Okay. And how have you addressed the environment trigger?
People around me, places that I did frequent and I no longer do. But even if I am at a place where there is alcohol involved, it's not something that preoccupies my time or creates any cravings for myself.
And how have you addressed the lack of understanding of the harm trigger?
Definitely not thinking things through when I would drink, but now in hindsight I see how damaging that could have been, or it has been actually, and I no longer want to be a part of that.
You mentioned that you do not have any cravings.
Right.
Should you experience cravings, do you have a relapse prevention plan in place?
I do.
And what is that plan?
Definitely, I want to stay in AA. I am going to stay in AA. As I said, like, I really enjoy it. It's not just for the purpose of going to AA, but feeling like it is like a home to me. That's definitely something that I would turn to and maintain the relationship that I have with my therapist. And we do address substance abuse, specifically alcohol, in session. So that's definitely something that's been helpful, and as well as the healthy support system that I now have.
Is your support system aware of your past?
Yes.
And how did they become aware?
I told them, and I often reference AA to a lot of my friends, so that's one of the reasons why they often do become aware, because I do reference AA a lot.
And has probation caused any burden personally or professionally?
Has what, I'm sorry?
Probation? Board probation?
Can you repeat the full question?
No problem. Has the board's implementation of probation on you caused any burden either personally or professionally?
It has. I enjoy travel, and so that has restricted me from traveling as often as I would like, or as I usually do, but also financially, it has gotten a little pricey. And also just being able to kind of manage my day as far as making appointments or meetings or other requirements that the board has asked of me.
Do you believe you're good at your job?
I do.
And why do you believe that?
As I said, I've become a lot more humbled since this whole experience, but I think primarily it's because I'm more willing to learn and admit my flaws, and I work very closely with my supervisor, Marissa Long, and she is great at giving me feedback, and when there is, space to grow professionally, she is definitely someone that has guided me in that way.
Do you consider yourself to be honest?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself to be trustworthy?
Yes.
Is there anything else that you'd like the board to know?
I just want to thank the board for giving me this opportunity to come before you and show you that this negative view or initial negative view of me can, definitely be something that can change, and it has changed. And I just want to make sure that that is something that the board is aware of, that I have changed my thinking, my behaviors, my lifestyle, so many things, just to be a better person overall, a better professional. Thank you.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
I'm going to ask the board members if they have any questions, beginning with Dr. Kasuga.
Hi, Dr. Reyes. Hi, Dr. Reyes. How does your experience with alcohol in the past affect your, clinical work, if at all?
I wasn't working as a psychological assistant then, so I
mean, your current work now. How has your experience in the past influence your current clinical work, if at all?
I would say it has influenced me in a positive way, only because I'm a lot more knowledgeable about substance abuse now, and I've been able to help clients and guide them, not necessarily, in a sense of telling them what to do, but just being more knowledgeable when it comes to substance abuse, the effects that it takes on the brain and the body. That's actually something that's been something that I've educated myself more on, so that I can help my clients now.
Have you had any issues with countertransference, or if so, how would you, if you anticipate that in the future, how would you address those if it comes up?
No, which is awesome, but I am very good at acknowledging that if it did, and that's actually something that even Dr. Long is very supportive of, because sometimes she'll check me and follow up, and even before I get a new client assigned to me, we do discuss the case, and if it's something that I feel comfortable with, then we move forward. If not, there's other providers that can assist.
And then moving forward, are you going to be staying with the same population, or how do you anticipate your practice going to be changing or staying, or?
Essentially, my degree is in forensics, so I want to eventually shift. But yes, individual and psych evals is what I want to do when I grow up.
Thank you.
No. Hi, Dr. Reyes.
Hello.
Let me just applaud you for having such great insight. It's
Thank you.
wonderful with your continuance in AA and the like. I was just curious, you mentioned the Grapevine magazine.
Yeah.
And I just wanted, could you tell how?
It's a very, if I may say this, a very old school, small magazine. It's pretty much like a meeting in your pocket. So that was introduced to me in one of the meetings that I went to. They're hard to find, but sometimes you'll find one, dusty in a corner. But they're pretty neat because a lot of them have personal stories, and I really enjoy reading those. Obviously successful ones.
I'm sorry, Ms. Padu, for breaking in, but what is Grapevine Magazine? I don't know what that is.
It's a magazine that's put together by AA, and it has, the way they describe it is, it's a meeting in a book, so you can read at your own leisure if you don't make it to a meeting, or if you want to do both.
And you seek this out, you seek the Grapevine magazines out?
Yes, like I said, they're hard to find, but if you find one, you want to get your hands on it, and yeah, they're pretty cool.
Thank you.
Dr. Erickson?
Hello, Dr. Reyes.
Hi.
I want to commend you on what, in my opinion, has been an exemplary number of efforts and so forth in reaching this point today.
Thank you.
Do you ever contemplate how your life would be if you had not been arrested in 2003 or 2011, how it would be today?
Yes, I do. I have.
Better, worse, different?
Very different. I don't want to say that because of the board I've changed to make these, more positive changes, but it's definitely been helpful. And, now in retrospect, this is definitely the path that I want to go in. So I don't want to say that I regret the life that I've lived in a way that, it sounds like I'm denying what I have been through, because I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that I have this opportunity.
And I guess what I had in mind is that I think some people on probation are embittered and don't do well, and others, such as yourself, I think, flourish and become much more than maybe you were in the beginning, and that's delightful to see, and I'm kind of wondering, how do we tell who's going to do well and who's not? I think you've done well, and if you have any insights on that, feel free to offer them.
Well, not doing well was not an option for me. I just want to make sure that, I'm not so much like the straight arrow, but as much as I can be.
No further questions, thank you.
Ms. Jones, do you have any questions?
Good afternoon, Dr. Reyes.
Good afternoon.
You were talking about the burdens of probation, and one of the items that when you responded to Dr. Kasuga's question about your practice monitor, it seems like that person also is a part of your relapse plan.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
so, you mentioned the continuing therapy and continuing AA. I guess the question is, and I don't know if it's implied by the plan, would you continue to seek out assistance with your practice monitor, and as you transfer to a different type of work possibly, what is your thoughts about reaching out for that kind of a resource?
Absolutely. She is great, right here. Not to put her on the spot, but great in so many aspects. And if you guys I wish you guys did, know how great she is and supportive. We have plans as soon as, hopefully sooner than later, I get licensed. She already has plans for me as far as growing in the profession, and she's not getting rid of me just yet. So, yes, we'll be working together, and she does maintain that for me.
I'm sorry, Dr. Phillips?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Reyes.
Good
I think it's the
afternoon.
afternoon. I'm losing track of time. I had a few questions I'd like some clarification on. You said your sobriety date is March 2011? Mm-hmm. Is there a specific day in March?
No, what I learned is that your sobriety date doesn't have to be the last time that you drank, but March is when I embrace my sobriety, because that's when I became more involved with AA and started going more regularly.
Have you had a drink since March 2011?
No.
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
In listing the two positions you hold or have held at present, one of them is being the intake worker at a behavioral health hospital, as I understand it?
Yes.
Is that a psychological assistantship?
No.
It's not? Because you listed your primary supervisor as an RN, so I was a bit confused by the reference. And it does say psychological assistant.
I thought we fixed that. No? Sorry. Curtis did tell me, but I thought I had fixed it.
Okay.
I apologize.
Dr. Stanford, when he's written documents for purposes of your probation, has consistently said if there's going to be an end to the probation, he would suggest that there be at least another 6 months of AA.
Okay.
If I understand you correctly, you intend to continue
Oh,
in
yes.
AA for the foreseeable future.
Yes, that's lifelong.
When you say you go to bi-weekly meetings, does that mean you're going twice a week, or are you saying bi-monthly?
By month.
So you're going twice
Every
a
other
month?
week.
Every other week. Why have you cut back your regularity of your schedule?
I switch between, there was some scheduling conflicts, so I switch between seeing Dr. Stanford one week, and then the following week I go to AA, and then I switch off. And then most recently, I'm not sure if you were able to get to that on my packet? Is that what this is called? I am also attending a support group on Wednesdays for Las Vegas shooting victims.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Do you have a sponsor in AA? You don't? Do you need a second? Okay.
Why don't we just take a brief break, so. We're off the record.
So you were saying that You go every other week to AA, and then the off week, you go to see Dr. Stanford?
Yes,
And then you're also involved in your support group?
yes.
Okay. Have you worked the steps?
I have, how can I say this? I haven't worked through the steps.
Okay.
There's some that I just feel more closely to than others, but not worked through them.
Is the spiritual aspect problematic
Yes.
for you?
Oh, no. Problematic? No, I love
Okay.
it.
Well, sometimes that's what people have difficulty with.
No, step 11 is actually one of the ones that resonates with me.
Oh, great. I noticed in looking at the list of people you mentioned in your support group, it doesn't sound like you mentioned anybody from AA.
Anyone from who?
AA?
I did ask, and for anonymity, they not refused, but they were not particularly wanting to.
Like provide a letter or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Are they part of your support group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many close friends would you say you have in AA?
I would say 3.
Okay. Yeah. The concern being, obviously, who are you going to call? And in some instances, it's probably better to call another alcoholic than to call another psychologist.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Horn, do you have any questions?
I do not, thanks.
Ms. Bernal?
Good afternoon, Dr. Reyes. Good afternoon. I also want to congratulate you on all your hard work.
Thank you.
That you've put in. And just quick question, would you recommend AA to like family and friends?
Yes, I've taken friends, not so much because I'm trying to push it on them, but because I want them to see the unity and the non-judgmental aspect of it, and that alcoholics they don't look a certain way, so that's been very helpful. I have a friend who has gone to like 2 or 3 meetings with me, and even just as my own support, and she has thoroughly enjoyed them and even felt like she related at one point or another, which I thought was pretty cool.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shields, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just a couple follow-up questions first to fill in a couple things that I'm a little confused about.
Use the microphone.
Oh, sorry. I'll speak up.
Thank you.
Just talking to myself over here. Your stipulation on page 016, the signature. Because earlier you stated you don't recall signing a settlement, so I just want to make sure you recall. Do you see it on page AGO 016? Is that your signature on line 20?
Yes.
Signed May 10th, 2015?
Yes.
Okay. And did you read that stipulation in its entirety when you signed it?
Yes.
And you signed it with your attorney present, right?
Yes.
Did you understand that you were admitting to the truth of all the allegations contained in the statement of issues?
Yes.
And that you were agreeing to being on probation for 5 years?
Yes.
Okay. You also just mentioned that you don't have cravings anymore for alcohol. When would you say was the last time you had a craving for alcohol?
Probably not since the last time that I actually drank. 2011.
March of 2011?
When was my arrest? February? February 2011.
Okay. So the last time you had a craving for alcohol, you drank the alcohol, and that's when the DUI occurred, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then about the 3 friends in AA, how often do you see them?
There's one that I see pretty much at every meeting that I go to, but because I go to different meetings on different days, I don't always see everybody on a regular basis. But there is a gentleman who pretty much goes to every meeting, and so he's the one that I see more regularly.
Okay. So approximately once every meeting that you go to, you'll see at least one friend?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to go through a little bit about the 2 DUIs to get just a little view on your take. The first DUI occurred in 2003 of October. Do you recall what your BAC level was?
I don't.
Does a .16 sound about right?
I remember where it was written, and I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember exactly, I'm sorry.
Okay. When you signed the stipulation regarding the settlement, it adopted everything that was truth in the statement of issues. Did you read that carefully with your attorney?
I did.
Okay. And do you if you want to look at it, it states in there that your first DUI had a BAC of .16. Do you disagree with that number?
Well, I don't exactly remember what the number was, but I know that we did go over this at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you pled no contest to it in the criminal system, right?
I thought it was guilty. Is that the same?
It's different, but you pled no contest.
Oh, okay.
Do you recall that?
I guess not. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'm just asking. That DUI in 2003, was that the first time you ever drove with alcohol in your system?
No, I had driven before.
Would you estimate as to how many times you might have done it prior to that time?
No, I can't think of a number.
Was it frequent?
No.
Infrequent?
Infrequent, yes.
At that time, I'm just calculating backwards, and my math is terrible, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But in 2003, were you approximately, 23 years old?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you first start drinking alcohol?
My first drink was at, I want to say 15.
Okay. And then from the age of 15, were you just a social drinker generally?
I'm thinking high school. So I would say not from 15, maybe later, years later, was when I would say I was a social drinker. At 15, I
Was your first
tried
drink?
it, but yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't something that I did regularly.
When would you say you became a regular social drinker?
Social
then?
drinker, I would say 20, 21.
Okay. And approximately how many drinks would you have on average?
2 or 3.
Was it common for you to have more than that?
Not usually.
Okay. Do you recall that night where you were pulled over?
Yes, pretty vaguely.
Do you remember drinking more than just 2 or 3 drinks that night?
I think that's what about what I had. It was wine, from what I recall.
And your best recollection is 2 or 3 glasses of wine that night?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Now, you were placed on probation, and then that was for 3 years, right?
Summary probation.
Summary probation, so to the court?
Yes.
For 3 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you completed probation, I'm guessing, about 2006?
2000. Yes.
Okay. Would you say you took that first DUI very seriously, or was it just a...
You know, to be
But-
honest, I didn't even know what it was. I knew I was in trouble, but I didn't know much about what exactly it meant.
Okay. Did it happen to change your drinking patterns?
It did.
How so?
I did stop drinking for a long time, and I
What
was
would you
more-
say is a long time?
I think that time, I don't remember, but it was at least a year, but I don't remember exactly how long it had been.
Okay. I'm sorry I cut you off. Go ahead.
I already forgot what I was saying.
That's okay. I'll keep going. Let's jump ahead to 2011. So sometime after 2006, because while you're on probation, you can't drive with any alcohol, right? And I'm guessing you've abided by those terms. You stopped drinking for approximately 1 year, and then come along 2011. Do you recall what your BAC level was in that case?
I know that one was .2 something. I don't remember exactly what the number was.
Again, in the statement of issues, it says that there were 2 breath samples, both tested at a .23. Do you recall that?
I know it was along that number, but
Okay.
yes.
So that sounds about right to you. And did you disagree with that result?
No.
Okay, so you admitted essentially that that seemed about correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall telling the officer that you also had taken an Ambien that night?
No, I did not say that. I do remember that.
You remember not saying that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's, according to you, that didn't happen?
Yeah, I've never actually taken Ambien in my life.
Okay. Do you recall telling the officer that you had 3 beers?
I don't recall.
I'm guessing it's hard to recall something from that night that's,
Yes.
given the circumstances.
Yes.
Do you recall having an open container of beer in your purse?
Yes.
Okay. So again, this case, again, you pled no contest to, right?
I'm sorry, I'm confused about like the guilty, no contest.
Well, you pled out. Let's
Okay.
put it that way.
Okay.
Versus guilty or no contest.
Okay.
So you pled out to the case. It's a second time DUI, right?
Yes.
And this time, again, you're on probation again for 3 years. And also, again, you're told to no measurable alcohol in your system and attend an alcohol treatment program. This time, it's an 18-month program versus a 3-month, right?
Yes.
The 3-month was for the first DUI,
Yes.
and then you did an 18-month for the second DUI. Okay. And it sounds like probation ends about 2014, correct?
Yes.
Did this second DUI change? This is when you're saying your last drink was that night?
2011, February 2011.
Okay. So not a sip of alcohol since the night you were arrested?
Right.
Okay. Do you remember being evaluated by Dr., I'm going to butcher his name, I feel terrible, Karbelnig, K-A-R-B-E-L-N-I-G?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall, that was part of your probation with the board, yes?
Yes.
And that was in October of 2015?
Yes.
Were you honest and forthcoming with everything with him?
Yes.
You didn't lie to him or anything?
No.
He says on his report's on AGO 517, if you want to turn to it. There's a paragraph in there where he says, currently Dr. Reyes denies having dependency problem with alcohol. For some months after the second DUI, she continued drinking approximately 2 times a week, usually during weekends and socially. Denies craving alcohol or drinking alone, says that means you're an alcoholic. Let me stop there real fast. Earlier you were talking about it. Do you see yourself as an alcoholic?
I know that alcohol has definitely been a problem for me in the past, but to be honest, I'm still working through saying that I'm an alcoholic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Continuing on, it says she began to have several periods of sobriety, some lasting as long as 8 months in length. She ultimately decided to stop drinking altogether during 2013. Do you know why he would call out 2013?
Well, this is something that I've struggled with as far as my psych eval. Well, as a whole, it's pretty accurate. There's some information on here that is not, from dates to names of individuals, and even, as you mentioned, some of the, like, my relationships. And so there's a lot of inaccuracies, and that's something that's concerning to me.
Okay. So one of those inaccuracies would be his listing 2013?
Yeah, I mean,
so you would change the 2013 to 2011?
11.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. When was your most recent AA meeting that you attended?
Wednesday.
Meaning yesterday?
Last week, sorry.
Last week. So last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday, yes.
Okay. And when was your last session with Dr. Stanford?
Yes, the week before that, the Wednesday before.
Okay. And let me just try to understand your attendance at AA. So you first start going in 2003 as part of the court ordered for the first DUI. How many AA meetings were you required to go to?
For 2003, either 10 or 12 is what I recall.
Did you go to any more than what was required?
After I submitted my paperwork, I did.
What paperwork?
All court requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did meet all the ones that court was required, and then you went to a few more after?
Yes.
How many more after?
Oh, I don't know. The court cards that they give you, I don't know how many meetings or how many lines
Sure.
it gives you, and I had 2 of those.
Okay, so you filled up 2 full cards? Okay. And that probably fits right in with when your year of sobriety after the first DUI? Okay. And then after that year, you stopped going to AA meetings, start drinking again, second DUI occurs, and then again, the court orders you to attend AA meetings?
Yes.
And how many AA meetings were you required to go to at that point?
I think it was 36.
Sounds about right. And I'm guessing you went to all 36?
Yes.
And that ended in, what, 2011, 2014? At which point then you're applying for licensure with the board, right? Okay. And so would you say consistently from the point that you pled out that second DUI to current, you've been consistent in AA meetings?
Yes.
Okay. On your relapse prevention plan that we received, I think it's Exhibit 8, the very first page, you list several people as your support group. Is that right?
Yes.
Looks like 1, 2, 3, 8 people? Oh, no, I can't count. Yeah, 8. And you said that some of them do drink, yes? Have you been around them while they drink?
Yes.
And that doesn't cause you to crave drinking alcohol?
No.
Okay. How often, or I'm sorry, I know this is a large group of people. Would you say you've known all of them throughout this time period, that from before the DUIs, or do you know most of them since the DUIs, or since being on probation with the board?
Well, let's see. Well, some For example, Ruth Braydale, she's my childhood friend, so I've known her for 20-plus years. And Eric, I've known for a very long time as well, I would say like 10 years. And the only one would be Dr. Stanford and Dr. Hannon. And then Elizabeth, who has been my friend for a year now.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I have a question to round back to. You mentioned earlier that even after being on probation with the board, that you plan to continue going to AA meetings. How often do you plan on continuing going?
As often as, or as much as I can, if I'm available. The only reason why I said that it's been difficult is because I'll have the freedom to go at different times instead of like making sure that I go to the same one every day. So, I mean, I enjoy the meetings. Like I said, it's my community now, so I don't have a problem with a number. It's just something that I know that I want to continue doing.
Okay. Would you agree being on probation has been helpful in assisting in rehabilitation?
Yes.
Do you think continued probation could have any continued benefit?
I mean, absolutely, but I think I'm just at the point where I've gained all the tools and skills and motivation and need to do this on my own.
Okay. As part of your probation, you are also required to abstain from alcohol, right?
Yes.
And does that mean that every day you call in and find out if you have to give a sample or something?
Yes.
In the past 2 years, I counted, there were 14 check-ins that you missed. Do you recall that?
No. Oh, at the beginning, I didn't know that even if I was on vacation, I needed to check in.
Okay.
So that was later brought to my attention by Curtis.
So was it after Curtis brought it to your attention that you then submitted information that you were on vacation during those times?
Yes.
But that wasn't prior to actually missing those dates, was it?
I'm not understanding the question.
When you submitted your vacation times, that wasn't prior to missing the actual call-in, was it? It was after. It was after Curtis told you that you'd missed the 14 times?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a
Yeah.
understanding about how that went down.
Yeah, from my previous monitor, I just knew that I had to send an email, but I don't recall learning or knowing that I needed to check in even while I was on vacation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you also recall receiving an email from Curtis Gardner saying that you're to have no involvement in the completion or submission of practice monitor quarterly reports?
Yes.
Were you filling them out? And she was signing off on them?
We would do them together.
Okay.
We'd be working on them together. and
Filling
then
out the
she
number of
was
cases that you had done, how many she had reviewed?
reviewing. Yes.
Okay. And that email was what, May of this year? May of 2017? Do you recall?
I don't know what.
Does that sound
date it
about
was.
right? Was it
It was
sometime
a few
this year?
months ago, yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Do any board members have any questions?
Dr. Reyes, I guess I have a question, two questions actually, given the recent questions. In terms of the psych evaluation and the concerns, so you, in response to the question that the DAG, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name.
Ms. Shields.
Ms. Shields, sorry, Ms. Shields, had asked, when she said about the comment about the drinking afterwards, you said that there were comments that were
Can you stop for a second?
oh, I'm sorry.
No, she's having a little.
Yeah. I heard a little beep.
There's a little glitch here.
One second.
Sure.
Give me about 45 seconds.
All this sounds.
I thought I had heard something.
That was like Star Trek.
Yeah, it just stopped.
Sure.
I don't know why.
Just tell me when.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so I'll start again, and I'll know the right name. When Ms. Shields was asking questions to you, Dr. Reyes, about the psych evaluation and about the drinking, I feel like, did I hear correctly, the response was you had some concerns, but was the information correct about drinking after?
Drinking after
The
2011?
Yeah, the 2013.
Was it correct? No, it was not correct.
So that was incorrect, okay. And have you contacted and tried to figure out a way to get the information updated in any way?
No, I didn't.
And then my second question is, I guess kind of the line of questioning from Dr. Phillips and kind of the questions that he asked and the questions that Ms. Shields asked about your AA involvement. And you just mentioned, you said you've gained all the tools and skills. And I know earlier some of the other questions from folks on this side of the room, you were saying that that was something that you really found a lot useful. So I just want to make sure I'm correctly. So you've reduced your involvement to the bi-monthly, so it's every other week as we laid out the kind of timing. You have not gotten a sponsor and you haven't worked all the steps. So I'm just curious in terms of kind of the involvement in AA, do you feel like you have fully gained all the tools and skills from your AA involvement, given the fact that you've admitted that you kind of have a couple other steps that you could do in the program? So I'm just curious, kind of given what you said about gaining all the tools and skills.
I'm definitely on my way there. I also there's an app on my phone that I have that it's the Big Book. So I use that also. So it's like AA is always with me. So because I'm not physically in a room, in a meeting, it doesn't mean that I'm not working on myself as far as AA is concerned. But, I read testimonials and I read chapters, and it's been very helpful. So not to say that because I'm in the rooms because it has to be documented, but outside of that, I'm actively working in AA.
And actually, one other follow-up to that, and I guess kind of thinking about the timeline about between 2003 and 2011, there was a break in time where you had stopped and you kind of went back. And I know that you have a relapse plan that's been outlined and developed. Do you have concerns at all about that, given kind of what you've seen happen before personally? And I feel like, do you feel like this plan is a different strategy that's going to help you? Or kind of how do you feel about that when you look back on kind of where you've been?
It is very different. I'm more aware, and when I say that I reference AA a lot, I do. So in AA, we talk about humility, we talk about courage, and we talk about integrity. So this is where I fall right now, where all these resentments, everything are things that I'm already like working through. So I know that some of these tools are definitely the tools that are going to help me in staying sober. And I mean, I take it a lot more serious. I know that there's a lot more to lose now. So on top of wanting to do this for myself, I know that I have to do this just for my community and, on a professional level as well. So at this point, relapse is not in my horizon, and I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that that does not happen.
I'm sorry. Dr. Phillips?
So during the course of his report, Dr. Karbelnik's report, he also indicated that you told him that you do not have any dependency problem with alcohol. Is that your belief?
Yeah, I don't think I was dependent on alcohol.
Okay, so you had 2 DUIs with pretty high blood alcohol levels, but you don't think you're an alcoholic?
No, this is still something that I'm working through and deciphering. As of right now, I wouldn't consider myself an alcoholic, but like I said, I do acknowledge that alcohol has been a problem.
Do you identify as an alcoholic in meetings?
No.
Okay. You said you were doing everything you could to prevent a relapse.
Mhm.
Do you think more regular attendance at AA would help prevent a relapse?
Yeah.
Is AA a priority for you?
AA is a big part of my life, and as far as a priority, meaning like I go as often as some of the members, I don't, but it is definitely something that I'm constantly thinking of and working on my own.
Okay. But you don't think you're an alcoholic, and you don't think you're dependent on alcohol, or were dependent on alcohol. So why should you stay sober?
Because I don't want to, how can I phrase this? There was definitely alcohol abuse. I never wanted it to get to the point where it became a dependence. So I want to continue to address it so it doesn't get to that point. And I'm very happy so far with the decisions that I made as far as staying in AA.
Okay. How much longer do you think it'll take for you to work through the question of whether you're an alcoholic or not?
That is something that I'm actively working with some of the group members in AA, as far as like taking their like questionnaires or surveys. And when I first went to AA, at least to the meetings that I go to now, that's something that they gave me, because when I walked in there, I said, well, I'm not sure if I am, or if I will get to that point where I can actually say that I am an alcoholic. So one of the gentlemen that goes to those meetings has been very helpful in that way. So.
Are you referring to the 20 questions?
Yeah.
And how many of those questions did you answer affirmatively?
Oh, I don't remember.
More than a few?
If I answer them as yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was like maybe 3.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question. May I?
Ms. Badou?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly. You mentioned that you missed 14 check-ins because you were on vacation. So my question is, how did you not know that while on vacation you needed to test? How did that slip by, or did it? Or were you told, or were you made aware?
That's the thing that I don't remember, that I was told that I had to check in, and to be honest, I didn't even know it was that many. But I know that Curtis brought it to my attention and asked me about the dates that I weren't called in, and I went back to my calendar, and that's when I realized that it was when I was on vacation. But I don't recall that being communicated to me as far as checking in while I'm on vacation. Yeah.
Dr. Kasuga?
Just a follow-up question on Dr. Phillips' question. So I hear that you don't consider yourself dependent or had problem with dependency. Do you have an addiction problem, or do you consider yourself like an addict, or
No.
Or having an addictive personality?
No.
Okay. Has like hiking replaced kind of like cravings for drinking, or it's
Oh, no,
just
it's
something
very different.
a different type of feeling for you?
Yeah. I mean, hiking is a challenge. It's a mental challenge, it's a physical challenge. And that's what, I'm challenging myself in being better and being a stronger hiker. Just this past weekend, I did Whitney, and I'm, still in pain, but very proud And it was a very rewarding moment for me, and this is where I want to be now.
And earlier, you talked about your therapy, and you mentioned that that you talk about your previous problem with alcohol in therapy. Is that correct?
Yes, it's always I don't want to say every session, but it's very much addressed in therapy.
What are some of the kind of like treatment that you want to share? Like, is there, what are you working towards in terms of that specifically?
Resentment is a big one.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Resentments that make me think negatively or feel negatively about myself, whether it's a resentment that just, happened on my way here, or a bigger resentment that's kind of been eating at me. And also, we always do check-ins as far as cravings are concerned too. So I would say those are the primary ones, and I think that's all I can think of.
In your therapy work, is your work with your therapist, you said it's going to continue even after, if your probation ends. And are your treatment goals ongoing? Do you have ongoing treatment goals that that you're working on, or so is termination something that is going to be appropriate or recommended by your therapist, or are you have a lot of working goals that you're still working on currently in terms of your alcohol?
We actively discuss goals, and even if we meet a goal, we make sure that we shift onto the next or working, on my goals at the same time. But one that has been addressed has been maintenance as well, sobriety maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one question. On an average week, how often do you go hiking?
At least once a week, but if I could squeeze one in, another one, maybe twice.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Ms. Shields, do you have any other questions?
I do. Just a couple to follow up, if I may. As a part of your packet, you submitted a therapy information sheet signed by your therapist, Dr. Stanford. It's page 192. Did you read it before you submitted it?
Yes, we discussed it.
Are you aware that his answer to question number 6 about whether he had an opinion about the reinstatement of your registration, and that he wrote that he has no opinion on reinstatement? Do you see that there?
Yes.
Okay. And then it states, I think as you all had just mentioned, that he would recommend ongoing AA meetings for at least 6 months, at least once every other week, right? Do you disagree with that recommendation?
No, I plan to continue AA, so that's not an issue for me.
It seems like your plan is to go once every 3 weeks, though, about
3 weeks?
Earlier you had said you had a rotation of...
every other week.
Of every other week? I thought it was 1 week of AA, 1 week with Dr. Stanford, 1 week helping out victims. Is that not?
No.
I must have misheard you.
No, the group therapy that I go to, sometimes sometimes they'll fall the same week that I see Dr. Stanford.
Okay.
So I either have a phone session or see Dr. Stanford, and then I run to the victims. I'm not helping victims, I was there.
I see. Understood.
And then when you're talking about that second DUI briefly, I'm sorry, the classes that you attended for the DUI conviction program, were those the classes that you used to satisfy the probation requirement for the board, that you attend an alcohol treatment program, or did you attend a separate program?
No, it's the
18-month program. Okay, so the 18-month program that you completed in 2011 was the program that was deemed to satisfy the term for the board, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then, you're checking in to summarize what your probation was, right? You were attending the AA meetings, you had therapy with Dr. Stanford, and the lab testing, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Or checking in?
Checking in.
Was there anything else beyond that I'm missing?
I think that's it.
Thank you. No further questions.
I guess at this point, is there anything else, Ms. Johnson?
I have some follow-up questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Briefly, though. You discussed a little while ago now at this point, your 2013 and your 2011 arrests.
Mm-hmm.
Was it your understanding that you took responsibility in criminal court?
2003.
Correct. Was it your understanding you took responsibility in criminal
Yes.
court for both? Okay. And did you comply fully with your criminal court probation terms?
I did.
And did you seek did you ever return to criminal court on these matters?
Yes.
For what purpose?
Is it get them dismissed?
You tell me.
I'm sorry. I think that's what it is.
Okay. Do you believe that you learned lessons after your 2011 conviction that were not present after your 2003 conviction?
Yes.
And what lessons were those?
Well, the seriousness of the convictions and the consequences, but also what that might mean for me professionally as well.
And we've talked a little bit about kind of your classification of yourself. Regardless of that classification, are you committed to your sobriety?
Absolutely.
And is AA your only tool for maintaining that sobriety?
No.
During your therapy with Dr. Stanford, have you discussed your petition for early termination of probation?
Yes.
And has he expressed any concerns to you about that petition?
No.
Did you request a letter from him in support of your petition?
I did.
Okay. And is that letter the one found at AGO 236?
Yes.
Okay. And in that letter, Dr. Stanford, in the last paragraph, writes that he finds you to be a viable candidate for early termination of probation as long as you continue your substance abuse recovery efforts. Has he expressed that same opinion to you?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Okay, Pat, do you have any other evidence on behalf of Ms. Reyes?
Your Honor, as Ms. Reyes has mentioned, her supervisor is here and present to answer any questions if the board has any questions for her.
Well, do any of the members of the board have any questions for Dr. Long? I'll just acknowledge, first of all, that she's here. Can you kind of present yourself, Dr. Long? Just say hi to the board. Okay. I don't know if any members, since Ms. Johnson presented Dr. Long like this, have any questions for you, Dr. Long, so I'll give the board members a chance to do that, to ask any questions. Okay. Thank you.
Other than that, Your Honor, petitioner has no further evidence.
So, at this point, we'll proceed with a summary of, or closing statements. The burden is on Dr. Reyes, and Ms. Johnson, you can go first.
Thank you. Approximately 2.5 years ago, Ms. Reyes appeared before this board via her application and asked for essentially the honor to join the profession. And in doing so, she made several promises that she would faithfully serve the board, that she would be honest, that she would have integrity, that she would maintain her sobriety, and perhaps most importantly, that she would be safe to the consumers and the public of California if allowed to practice. And Dr. Reyes has upheld those vows. She has, over the last 2.5 years, established herself professionally in an area where, by all accounts, she's thrived. She's supported by her colleagues, she's supported by her supervisor, who not only offers baseline support, or even just support through a letter, but has taken time out of her day to travel here today, simply to be available should the board ask for questions. It's that level of support from those who know her so closely and so innately that help demonstrate the type of professional that Dr. Reyes is when presenting herself not only to the board today, but to the public and to those clients that she sees in the future and in the past as well. Perhaps most importantly, though, this board is rightfully concerned about Petitioner's ability to maintain her sobriety. And Petitioner has addressed that openly today, looking not only into the insight of what caused her 2003 and 2011 convictions, but more importantly into the steps that she's taken to address them moving forward. It's important to note that many of these steps taken by Petitioner were done voluntarily. They were done after criminal court and prior to board probation, which shows that not only does she recognize when these steps are necessary, but additionally that she has the self-drive to take them voluntarily on her own decision. She has discussed the benefit that AA has provided her, not only through the meetings, but through her ability to seek out magazines, to download the app on her phone, to introduce it to her family and to her friends, to ask them to come to meetings regardless of how they feel about the situation, simply to see if they'll learn something. She's incorporated it into her everyday life, not only the steps, but the actual lessons behind the purpose of AA. And not just that. She has supplemented AA with her therapy, something that she admits she's engaged in prior to being placed on probation with the board, and something that she asserts that she will continue in the future because she's found it to be valuable and she's found lessons in it that she thinks are helpful and will continue to be helpful as she moves forward. And these lessons are supported by her therapist, who provided not only the form the board asked for, but took the additional step of providing a letter of support of Petitioner in support of her petition and in support of the request that she's come forth today with. But in addition to those tools of therapy and AA, Petitioner has presented a change in her life in general. Her life today bears little resemblance to the life she had in 2011. She's articulated a new social circle. She's articulated a new profession, a new passion she's found in hiking. And as she mentioned, drawing attention to step 11 for the AA, she's found a new higher calling and a purpose, the spirituality that she has looked in and discovered and advanced through her own insight, through the AA steps, and through her own personal efforts into herself. It's this combination of rehabilitation that Petitioner has taken, not just simply one step and not just simply those steps asked for by the board, but those steps taken in totality that have led to her rehabilitation. It's also what's allowed her to maintain her sobriety for not only the last 6 years, but allowed her to maintain the ability and to maintain her belief that that sobriety will continue in the future. She has not disputed the convictions that brought her here before the board originally. She admits that she was arrested in 2011. She admits that she was convicted in 2003 as well. She has taken responsibility from the beginning. While she may not know the legalities of no contest or guilty, and certainly no one, or at least I certainly can't blame her for that, she acknowledges that she took responsibility in court. She knew that point. And she knew that taking responsibility is very important in these cases. And it's allowed her to be open and it's allowed her to be honest. When looking at the board's reasons for putting people on probation, there are certainly several, right? It allows the board the mechanism to oversee those who they worry might be a concern. It's the rationale the board itself articulated when putting forth its terms of probation and its disciplinary guidelines. And Petitioner has demonstrated, we hope and we certainly believe, that that mechanism is no longer necessary in her case, that she will not be a danger moving forward to the public. The closest guidance that we can find from statute or from regulations would be the California Code of Regulations, which allows the criteria for the board to put forward when looking at rehabilitation for denials or reinstatements. Obviously slightly different from what Petitioner is asking for today in early termination, but the guidelines still provide us at least some guidance unsurprisingly taken from the name. And looking at those guidelines, it appears that petitioner has met them all, starting with the idea of the nature and severity of the actions. Certainly, petitioner does not deny that her DUIs were severe. She doesn't deny the fact that these were important or that these were turning moments in her life. But she looks at the idea of 6 years later. Are they so severe as to impact her probation? And it's her intention that, and her belief that based on the rehabilitation she's shown, the answer is quite simply no. We then look to the second criteria of any evidence of any crimes following the action that placed her initially on board probation. And by most accounts, petitioner has been a model probationee. Now, obviously, there was the vacation issue with the missed check-ins. She's never had a missed test. She has the support of those who are, or never had a dirty test, I'm sorry. She has the support of those around her. She has immediately fixed any of compliance issues. She found out, she received the email, she took proactive steps. She stayed compliant with probation the way that she understood it and has asked. The time that has elapsed, turning to the third criteria, since her last commission, or her last commission of a crime, it bears important in this situation. 6 years is certainly, in many accounts, a long time. I mean, we can look at in the span of someone's life, and maybe 6 years can seem a small percentage, but looking at who petitioner was when she first received her first DUI in her early 20s, and looking at the person she presents now, the majority of her adult life, the last 6 years have been very strong, and they've allowed her that time. Equally importantly, she has used that time wisely. Those 6 years are not just a number. Those 6 years have been used by her to seek out these steps, to achieve the steps, and to achieve rehabilitation. For the fourth consideration, she has not only complied with her criminal court obligations, she's actually taken an additional step, returning back to criminal court and having those convictions dismissed, something that she sought in and of herself. It was not required. It was simply her making amends with the criminal justice system. And that leads us to perhaps the most important criterion, and that of evidence of rehabilitation. Case law has identified rehabilitation for us over and over again. It's looked at the idea of the state of mind. It's looked at the idea of praising a person who has achieved reformation in society, and it has told us repeatedly that when someone has achieved that rehabilitation should be considered. It should be acknowledged. And that's ultimately the crux of what a lot of these board proceedings are for. We know that board probation is not designed to punish a practitioner. It's designed, as I've said and as we've been educated, it's designed to protect the consumers of California. Petitioner has not presented a danger to the consumers of California since she first came to this board with her application. Her employers have told us that. Her colleagues have told us that. Those who know her the best have told us that she has taken the honor of appearing on behalf of this board and representing this board when out with patients seriously, that she maintains the honesty and the integrity, and that she, by all accounts, has continued to serve it the way that she once vowed she would. She's coming before the board now and asking that not only is she allowed to be released from probation early so that she can maintain her better schedule, so that she can not be held to the testing requirements, so that she can leave her job or stay at her job at times when they are raised, so that she can also save money and finances and resources, but also because she believes, and she's hopeful that you believe as well, that she's found the tools that were necessary in probation, and that probation by all extents worked for petitioner. And at this point, she's simply asking that since probation has worked, since she has achieved her rehabilitation, that she be allowed to move forward with a clear and unrestricted ability to practice the way that she's been doing for the last 2.5 years. And for these reasons, we requestfully ask that petitioner's petition be granted and that she be allowed off probation early. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the Attorney General's position?
Rehabilitation is a state of mind, as just mentioned. The amount of evidence of rehabilitation required varies according to the seriousness of the misconduct. The more serious the misconduct, the stronger the petitioner's showing of rehabilitation must be. Fully acknowledging the wrongfulness of past actions is an essential step towards rehabilitation, but it is not the only step. There's case law that also states that the mere expression of remorse does not demonstrate rehabilitation. A truer indication of rehabilitation will be presented if a petitioner can demonstrate by sustained conduct over an extended period of time
The evaluation is not simply counting the number of years, she's to measure the rehabilitation. She has given a very clear picture to the board today about her attitude, the internal measure, her subjective attitude regarding her past conduct. She's clearly expressed remorse, she's accepted responsibility for her actions, and she clearly has a strong grasp of what she has done. However, we've also seen her still struggle with some of the questions of the board members, whether or not AA meeting is a priority. There's a hesitation. Is it a priority, or is it just a big part of her life? She hesitates with, as she acknowledges, she still hesitates in admitting whether or not she's an alcoholic. She, in her papers, has denied also being dependent on alcohol. So the question rightfully was posed. If you're not an alcoholic, or you're not dependent on alcohol, what's the motivation to remain or to abstain from alcohol? I'm not sure that question has been answered to the fullest extent yet today. I'm not minimizing what she has done. She has complied with all the court probation terms imposed by the 2 previous DUIs. She's complied essentially with a majority of the probation imposed by the board, minus the 14 check-ins, and I believe there's also 2 weeks of therapy she missed. But understandably, this probation is quite extensive. However, compliance is only a consideration. The burden is on the petitioner to convince the board without any hesitation that she is rehabilitated, that she will not pose a danger to the public. And we have only seen 2 years. Prior to the 2 years of being on probation with the board, she's not on the board's radar. So we have her self-reported abstinence from 2011 to 2 years ago, 2015. We don't have any record of that abstinence, only her self-reporting, which is contrasted with the psychological evaluator's report, who I can't say his name, Dr. K, who says that she reports periods of sobriety lasting up to 8 months, and then has determined to be sober since 2013. Quite specific details. She refutes those today. She says today that's all a mistake. She's been sober since 2011. The last time she had a craving for alcohol, she was arrested and her level was a .23. She's given us a relapse plan about what she will do the next time she has a craving for alcohol, but that hasn't been tested. We can hope that it will be all right, that she will be able to handle it, that her support group that she has put herself in, that her circle of support will be sufficient. But the board doesn't know that yet. If her last craving for alcohol, she succumbed to that craving, and that was in 2011, and she drank to the point of a .23 blood alcohol level. A person who is a social drinker for just an occasional drinker, as she says, 2 to 3 drinks, that won't get a person to a .23. .23 is 3 times the legal limit. She wasn't crashing her car. There's no car wreck. She was just driving on the highway without her headlights on at a .23. Functioning fairly decent, with an open container spilling in her purse. The nature and the severity of the acts are extremely high. It is extremely serious conduct here that we are addressing, and her own therapist, who regularly sees her now, in his statement to the board on his report of therapy, states he has no opinion on reinstatement. He doesn't recommend it, neither does he discourage it, but he has no opinion. but then puts a caveat, however, at least one AA meeting every other week. Why is that statement in there? Why does he not have an opinion on her reinstatement at this point? This is taken from her own therapist at the current time, which is our best measure of whether or not she has been fully rehabilitated. We don't have any current evaluation other than the one from 2015, which she states has many statements that are incorrect. One of those being her sobriety. We're not too sure what the others might be. But she's not taken any steps to have those corrected or addressed. If she fully believes that she's been sober since 2011, something should have been done about that statement in there, because it's a full paragraph about her drinking habits post-2011. As I mentioned earlier, she's shown a proper attitude. That is the internal subjective measure. But do we have the objective measure? Has that portion been satisfied? I would argue it's not. 2 years on probation with the board is too short of an amount of time to be on probation under the supervision of the board to see whether or not she's safe to practice. The 2 DUIs, while old, occurred over 8 years apart, and they got increasingly worse. Her BAC they weren't .08s, barely at the legal level or beyond the legal level. These are .16s and .23s. The 1.6 came first, and we all understand she says that she stayed sober for a year, but we all know that didn't last very long. And that's after attending alcohol treatment course for 3 months. That's attending 5 to 10 AA meetings. And then we have our 8 years down the road, we've got a .23. That number is not to be taken lightly, and I would ask the board to consider this very seriously. It is our position that it is not in the public interest to terminate probation this early on, that 2 years is not enough time. I would argue that a little more time at least to understand whether or not she is still posing a risk to the public, if she is fully rehabilitated. A little more therapy, a few more AA meetings, work through the steps, and fully acknowledge where she stands with alcohol. What is her relationship with alcohol? When she can definitively answer that question, maybe at that point. Thank you.
Well, thank you. With that, is there anything else? If not, we'll close the record and deem this matter submitted. And I wish you good luck, Dr. Reyes, and we're off the record. Thank you.
Thank you.